Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 9 a.m. and the live stream and recording has begun. You may begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, Council, members of SLT, members of the public joining us this morning, and the people, residents viewing the council members on the live stream. I see that we do indeed have quorum this morning, so I call this session, regular council meeting of January 29th into session, this council. I ask all those that may to please stand for the singing of the national anthem.
From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Next on the agenda is the reading of the land recognition statement, and this week, Councillor Olson, you have the honor.
Thank you, Mayor Junkin. The town of Pelham is situated on treaty land, steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandawak, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people, including the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island live and work in Niagara. The town of Pelham stands in solidarity with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, acknowledging that our high standard of living is a result of the resources and lasting friendship of Indigenous peoples.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is the approval of the agenda, and I turn to our clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the agenda for the January 29th, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on the agenda? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item 5, disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, does any council member have a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that brings us to our first presentation this morning, which is the Ontario Arts Council Community Mural Project. And I do believe that Mr. Cribbs has some opening remarks.
I turn to our CAO, Mr. Cribbs.
Good morning. One of the things that life has taught me is that almost every significant, meaningful accomplishment requires a team of people. And so there's a big green monster in the back of the room. And that big green monster started as an idea amongst, a half dozen staff members. And that idea turned into a grant application, and that grant application turned into Ontario stepping up and the federal government with funding to help us with a community project. So far, so good. But then you need talent. And we were lucky enough to find Heather Potts, who created the vision. So you needed an idea, you needed work, you needed another order of government, 2 orders of government to say that's a good idea. We're prepared to support that. We like community. Then we needed some talent. All right. And so then we had kind of a, not exactly a blank canvas, but something that from between Miss Potts and a company that could help realize her vision. Then all of a sudden we had this canvas that people could paint on. And I won't steal the news or the thunder. There's an ending to this presentation, but I got to tell you, it was a really high participation rate from all kinds of people, the whole swath of society, and kind of people in their first decade of life to people in their 80s and 90s, like the whole gamut. And so we're here today to see this great new piece of our community, and to that end, if I could call on both Ms. Potts, and we're privileged to have MPP Oosterhoff present, to help us find out what's beneath that big green monster, that would be utterly wonderful. And well, Sam, you're tall. You want to grab some of those pegs?
Oh, Sam's
You've got
over
this
there.
thing. Okay. So, Sam, I don't know if you have a couple of words you'd like to share. You're very welcome to do so now. And from there, we'll turn over to Ms. Blake.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. CAO, and it's a privilege, first of all, to be welcomed into your legislative chambers. It's a privilege I don't take lightly, and I want to acknowledge and thank the council and the mayor for welcoming me this morning. And I want to acknowledge the incredible vision and insight of the team who helped put this together. I mean, to see a vision of what really represents some of the best of this community is really important. I had the privilege of serving as parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport for a short period of time. And I'll tell you, in that time, having the opportunity to visit a lot of communities across the province and see how their public art really represented what they saw as the essence of their community, of some of the best of what people are able to bring forward, is amazing. And what sticks out to me about this is its color, its vibrancy. And I think that's what we see in the people who are in Pelham. They are vibrant people. They are people who work hard, as you can kind of tell by the utility nature of the farm implement there. They're proud of their rural roots, but they're also moving forward. And I think when you see, the tractor moving down towards the future, as it's going down that path, it speaks to the fact that there are still better days to come for this community, still better days for the people who are here today and who are also moving in. So it's a really impactful, really beautiful piece of art, and I know it will be enjoyed for many, many years to come. And I want to just bring greetings and thanks for the work and the initiative on this. The Ontario Arts Council provides grants across the province, but I'm very confident that very few of those grants will have gone to a project more beautiful than this. So congratulations, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. Well done.
Thank you. My name is Karen Blake, in case I haven't met any of you. I'm the Culture and Community Enhancement Programmer here at the town. And it's my pleasure to be part of the first community mural that was done from start to finish here in Pelham. A community mural doesn't just happen without the wonderful support of community partners, individuals from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, Yale Crosley art students, Rotary Club of Font Hill Bandshell Committee members, the Brush Buddy Painting Group, Pelham Cultural Advisory Committee, the Raiders Lacrosse team, and other community members who stopped by to add to the mural. It was a great community effort, and it was really encouraging to see kind of the diversity of people who came out to paint. The finished project had over 95 people who contributed to the painting of the mural, and in total the project has approximately 136 hours of work put into it to fill in each paint by number space. The project had such positive feedback from all participants who ranged in age from 7 to 90, and it was truly a community effort. The mural will be installed this year on Town Hall, on this wall here, and to all those who were part of this project will be recognized on a plaque beside that. For more information on the project, residents can visit online at pelham.ca/mural project. That's it.
Thank you.
I think it's entirely appropriate for us to break a little protocol and maybe do a couple photos with some people and the mural. And then we get back to business and being boring government. But this is wonderful. So perhaps we could do since we have the media present.
Richard, you're the photographer. Go ahead
Yep.
and line them up.
Yes. Your worship, you want to go up with Sam?
Here, I'll go on this side so I don't hide the traffic. I feel like the traffic is the best part. 4-year-old son with me. Yes.
Slipping this way?
I'm done right there. Sorry. Thank you.
Now, as that tractor moves down the road, are people driving it, right?
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah. Exactly.
We have technology.
Okay, yep, Madam Clerk, maybe perhaps, maybe that mural won't make it outside, and it looks pretty good right there. Yeah, just saying. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, that brings us to our next presentation, and we do invite Marianne Love from ML Consulting, who's joining us over Zoom this morning. Please just allow Ms. Kennedy a moment to bring her into the meeting.
Thank you.
Ms. Love, we do see that you've joined us and your audio is on. Can you see and hear us? Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have a presentation. I'll put it up on screen. Is that visible to members of council? Is it on screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I take it there's probably been an introduction already, and I'll just jump into the presentation.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll just put this to a slideshow format. And we'll take it from there. And I'm happy, to the mayor, I'm happy to take questions as we work through, or you could hold those to the end. I'll just follow your lead. The background has been set out, I think, well in the staff report, and there's reference to a 2021 compensation review having been conducted. That review resulted in a new salary grid at that time with job rates reflective of the 55th percentile. The review was comprehensive. It also included the review of internal equity using a new job evaluation system, and we reviewed pay equity compliance. Your current salary grid consists of 15 bands, and each of these bands includes 5 steps with a 4% step differential between each step. And since that last review, your salary grid has been adjusted annually, I understand, having regard to consumer price index changes, negotiated settlements, and having regard to financial impacts. I also understand new and changed positions have been evaluated using the job evaluation system. So we've had a good track record of maintenance in between your review cycles. I was retained in 2024 to conduct another review of your compensation program with specific focus on the competitive pay market and your current pay practices with a view to testing your percentile pay targets. Understanding we're in an evolving pay market. So certainly while we're doing this, we're also keeping our eye on the other equities, internal equity and pay equity compliance. The intent of the review was to bring forward proposed job rates for implementation this year. And this report basically summarizes the approach taken in that review and the outputs. We reviewed current job descriptions. They were updated for all of our positions to make sure we were reflective of current content. I conducted a custom market review. We sourced 10 municipal comparator organizations, and the comparators were selected having regard to historical comparators, geographic placement within the province, and measures of size and scope of service. I reviewed the job descriptions for these for Pelham positions, and updated job evaluation results were required. The current banding framework, the banding framework is the left-hand side of your salary grid. It was tested to ensure that the framework would continue to support internal equity. Coming through this review, I prepared proposed 2024 job rates that were reflective of the 60th percentile of the defined pay market. I also prepared, as the staff report states, the 55th percentile for testing as well. Because all of the field work was done in 2024, we needed to then adjust the salary grid framework that was prepared by further for cost of living, for implementation costing, and in the 2025 budget cycle. And the implementation costing is also reflected in the staff report. This slide, from a sort of a high level, just reminds us of Pelham's approach to compensation. Your compensation philosophy is principle based. Our policy or compensation program reflects the principles of internal equity, pay equity, compliance, market equity, reflective of pay for performance, and also sustainability renewal. The bottom part of this slide basically sets out the steps in the project and also components of your program. We started with collecting current and updated job information, updated job evaluation results, and tested for pay equity. The steps 1, 2, and 3 are all internal to Pelham. Step 4 is when we took a look at the external pay market, and step 5 is putting all the component pieces together to prepare an updated salary grid. This review focused on the salary grid payment, the cash compensation in salary grids. It did not do a deep dive on other elements of pay, such as benefits or ancillary pay. It was just a cash compensation focus. It's also focusing on evaluating and matching positions and not necessarily the people. So we have other programs at the town that are dealing with our employees in terms of attraction and retention, one of which is a performance management program. This slide further describes your principles. Fairness and compliance are key principles, and both of them are supported by a job evaluation program which is robust at the town. Fairness is when we have a salary grid that has jobs placed in that grid based on similar value. And any job that's within that band, within a band, won't be the same job, but similar enough that the individuals within that position would track to a common job rate. Compliance is underscored through a review for compliance with the Ontario pay equity legislation. The purpose of that legislation is to ensure there are no pay gaps for female-dominated job classes when compared to male job classes of similar value. Our competitiveness is when we take a view of the external pay market to ensure we're able to effectively attract and retain the top talent that we need to provide our municipal services. And this is achieved and tested by paying at a competitive percentile relative to that pay market. Pay for performance principles as our folks move through the grid based on performance metrics in a performance management program. The principles of sustainability and renewal they are reflective of many considerations. A key one is the budget implications and projections for workforce planning. Sustainability renewal is also reflected in your best practice compensation tools that you have to support this your compensation program at the town. Also, your renewal processes, and this is evidence of one of those one of those processes whereby we periodically do a deep dive into the compensation program to ensure we're able to hit the success criteria that we've identified. By way of overall summary, ensuring our employees at the town are paid fairly and competitively is a requisite for effective service delivery. And this is given the limited resources in municipalities and the challenges that many municipalities are facing in attracting and retaining staff in specialized technical and management positions. The 60th percentile pay target is recommended as representative and progressive, having regard to the scope, size, and composition of the 2024 comparator group, and this is in relation to the town, and in having regard to an evolving pay market. On the whole, we're paying below the 60th percentile of the defined comparator group. However, we have some positions that we're doing quite well with. So the opportunity here is to do a reset and get all of our positions in and around a common target, just as we did back in 2021. The banding framework, left-hand side of your grid, can support your organization design and the placement of positions based on job content, internal equity, and the defined pay market. And your updated compensation framework that's been produced through this review is reflective of internal equity. Our positions are all placed in the pay bands based on the content of the job and application of job evaluation system. We have pay equity compliance. All of our female job classes have a job rate that's equal to the male comparator rate, and our pay practice that is aligning job rates for all positions recommended to the 60th percentile pay target of the defined market. This slide just drills down a little bit on some of the key component, the two key equities, which are internal equity and pay equity. I've referenced already your job evaluation system which was introduced 4 years ago. It's continued to be used at the town. That system measures skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. These are the 4 key requirements of pay equity compliance. It's a robust tool, has usable factor language. It can effectively evaluate the diverse positions in this employee group. Your banding framework holds these jobs of similar value. The framework has 15 bands. There is one empty band that has been retained to support changes in job design and future growth. That's band 14. The jobs are then placed in the respective bands based on the job value. Because again, it's position evaluation. We have 6 positions that moved in band placement relative to the current grid, and this is supported by the job evaluation results and the market survey. So again, this opportunity to do an update and a reset. In terms of compliance.
Excuse me. We have a question from one of the councilors. Thank you. Councilor Nesnick?
Hi, thank you very much. So just a question on those 6 positions that moved in band placement. Would you be able to highlight those positions? Do you have that information with you?
Yes,
Thank you.
we certainly can. We can hold that to the end. I just don't have that evidence right on this slide. And I know that Brianna, who's I think with us, can also speak to that as well. If we'd like to identify those now, or wait to the end of the presentation. I'm in your hands.
Councilor?
Yeah, that's fine. We can wait till the end. Thank you very much.
Okay, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in terms of compliance, we are required as a public sector employer to demonstrate pay equity compliance for our full-time, part-time, and seasonal positions. And we also have to demonstrate we're maintaining compliance. So this is an everlasting requirement. So we reviewed our compliance in using our and I prepared a 2024 analysis. The pay equity analysis was using our maximum pay rates. We have 13, which is a requirement of the Act. We have 39 female job classes. We have male comparators for 38 of them. And we use union cross comparators for for bands 2 and 3. Again, we're following the sequencing provisions of the Act. We did this in 21. I did it again in 2024. Where we have no male comparators of similar value that we can use at the town, we have to run a male regression line. I did that to determine a pay equity comparator rate for the female job class that's in band 12. The result of the analysis is there are no pay equity adjustments identified. And this is largely attributed to the work that has been done in between these reviews by keeping your job evaluation system top of mind, and also the work that was done in this review, which took a look at those 6 positions and lifted them as required. So I think I've covered the pay equity obligations. Now I'm going to move and the results, and now I'm going to move over to the market competitiveness. As was said before, we conducted a custom market survey, which means we went out and selected 10 comparators, and we selected those comparators having regard to defined criteria. Geographic location, proximity to large urban, economic conditions, similar service alignment with municipalities with like services. We had considerations of size and scope, and also had regard to historic comparators. The 10 comparators selected are Fort Erie, Haldeman, Grimsby, Kingsville, Lincoln, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Port Colborne, Thorold, Tillsonburg, Wainfleet. These comparators were all used in the 2021 compensation review. So it gives us a pretty good sense of how we're tracking over that over the 4-year span or 3-year span. The approach taken is such that I matched positions in Pelham to similar positions in comparator organizations having regard to job title, job information, organization charts. And when we're matching, we're comparing the maximum 2024 annual and hourly job rates or pay rates for Pelham positions as compared to those the maximum pay rates offered by the comparator organization. When I performed the job matching exercise, I always use a conservative approach and remove outlier matches. And this allows us so that the results aren't skewed and makes the results more reliable and usable in terms of a market assessment. Where we are able to get 3 or more matches for a Pelham position, we're able to calculate or prepare an analysis to determine market competitiveness using percentile values. And we use percentile targets in compensation to help define our relative placement to the pay market. The percentile target, this is set out in your staff report. It's a measure of how the positions are ranked within the comparator group. So if we were fortunate enough to get, say, for example, 10 matches for a Pelham position, I could rank order those matches from the highest paid comparator match to the lowest. The 60th percentile target value would be the dollar rate amongst those 10 comparators, where 60% of the wage rates in the group are below and 40% are above. So the 60th percentile then is a little higher target in terms of a dollar rate than the 55th. And the 55th, of course, is a little higher dollar rate and target than the 50th. This slide gives us a sense of just aggregate assessment here, or general assessment. So if we're taking a look at our annual salaries, the maximum annual salaries for our positions in this employee group at Pelham, we are currently about 1.3% below the 55th percentile target and 2.9% below the 60th. If we're comparing our hourly rates, the gaps are a little higher, and this is due to the differences in annual hours of work for positions amongst the comparator group. It's exactly what we'd expect to see. So it's really data that tells the story. So when we look at these numbers, they're not high numbers. And you can see, as we referenced here in the slide, we have some jobs that are paid pretty competitively. We have other jobs that are gapped, and some considerably. So what we have to do now is to just recognize that and bring them all up in and around the selected pay target. So we are less competitive when we're comparing our maximum pay rates for mid-level and senior level management positions, and these are sitting in our bands 8 to 15. This is not unusual in conducting a review such as this. It's in keeping with market observations for other municipalities where these reviews have been done across the province. And this is largely due to the challenges to attract and retain talent, which is largely due to the shrinking age demographic, which is definitely hitting, you can see in these bands. The majority of the positions in this employee group are paid at around that 60th percentile. However, our gaps are in bands 1 and 2 and in bands 8 to 15. So again, we want to achieve equity in competitive pay. In order to do that, we need to do a reset to the job rates in the salary grid, just as we did back in 2021 in the last review, so that we're all starting on the same foot in 2025. So why is it that we have these, these results that presented as they have? Well, it is definitely an evolving pay market. Many of the comparators in our comparator group have completed a salary review in the last 3 to 4 years, and they've adjusted their grids accordingly. Many of the comparators have revisited their own compensation practice, and they've adjusted their comparator pool and/or they've increased their target market percentile to achieve competitive job rates. In short, they do what's best for them. In 7 of the 10 comparators have adopted a pay target that's above the 50th percentile. The pay targets in our comparator group range from the 55th percentile to the 70th percentile, and the 60th percentile is prevalent. That's the prevalent target amongst the group. In terms of activity in compensation reviews, 2 of our comparators that I know of have completed a compensation review in 23, 3 completed a compensation review in 24, and 2 are undertaking a compensation review in 25. So it just gives you a sense of the evolving pay market. So it's hard to sort of, we don't want to move ahead of ourselves, but what we need to do is recognize what it is for what it is, and come in with a compensation, with a target that supports their compensation program and is also progressive. The recommended pay target for the town of Pelham is, through this review, is the 60th percentile. It's having regard to the size and scope of our comparator group. It's not an aggressively selected group. It's the same group we had the last time. We can just see there's an evolving change. I've applied a conservative approach to job matching, so our observations or the results are not skewed high. They're relatively conservative. We want to make sure that we're able to attract and retain our top talent. We also are mindful of where we're situated within the province, within the region, and the evolving practice within that comparator group. Certainly some of the economic conditions and external influencers within the local area I've addressed or I've chatted about. As I said, I don't think this is an aggressive approach. I think it's progressive. We've slowly moved from a 50th percentile target to a 55th percentile, and we're suggesting a modest move to the 60th, which is in keeping with the practice amongst our group. It's not the highest target. It's not the lowest target. It's nicely situated within that selection. The pay target will align our pay rates for positions in the employee group with the competitive pay market and will achieve equity when comparing to the defined market. So again, just in terms of having to move this into a framework, because all of the work's done in 24, I prepared a 2020 for non-union salary grid framework that's reflective of the 60th percentile. I also prepared a framework that's reflective of the current percentile. These frameworks both consist of 5 steps, 4% differential, just as your current one has. And step 5 is our highest step. That's our job rate, or the maximum rate for each band. These frameworks were then both tested for compliance and compression with union pay rates, and also then needed to be adjusted by COLA, so 3%, to account for an economic adjustment to bring us into the 2025 budget cycle. These frameworks were then moved over to staff for implementation costing, for placement of our positions in the new grid, and I understand that that was done by considering a next closest step or meaningful step approach, again, mitigating costs. And this approach for implementation costing is reflective of equity, and it's also, and consistency, it's a best practice, and it supports retention and sustainability in the organization. The staff report goes into greater detail in terms of the cost impacts and the funding envelope. In terms of pay practice and future considerations, I'm recommending that the town adopt a pay practice of targeting the 60th percentile of the defined pay market, and that the town adopt the 2025 grid effective March 1, 2025. It's also recommended that we continue to that the following practices set out here will be to be adopted to build resilience in the program, and some of these we've already started a bit of a track on. So we've had we've adopted a cycle time, 2021, 2024, and that is in keeping of best practice within the sector. So many municipalities are conducting market reviews on a 3 to 4 year cycle to ensure competitive pay practice in light of changing demographics and work practices in the municipal sector. And it's recommended that we continue this practice at Pelham. This allows us to ensure we're not overpaying or underpaying positions. It just gives us this opportunity to do a reset and bring all positions up in and around the common target. I'm also recommending your annual increases to the salary grid be determined by conducting a review of the comparator organizations. This will help us to determine what they're doing. So we can take an average of the comparator group projected salary increases, and this gives us a number. There are also other indicators around that will inform increases. We can take a look at the CPI increases, certainly have regard to the town's negotiated collective agreement increases. These data points will all inform the appropriate salary grid adjustments for the salary grid and move us into a sustainable compensation framework. Also recommending that our job rates, our maximum pay rates in this framework continue to be monitored for compression with union positions, and also that new and changed positions continue to be evaluated using the job evaluation system that was introduced in 2021, and good to keep an eye on pay equity compliance on an annual basis. And that concludes the presentation, Your Worship, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we'll go, has the answer being found for Councillor Nesnick's question? And I'll turn to our human resources person.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 6 positions that were identified as needing an adjustment through this review are the manager of planning, the deputy chief building official, the manager of people services, the communications specialist, the policy planner, and the staff accountant and payroll clerk.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nesnick?
Yes, thank you very much. While I have the microphone there, I'm also just curious why, and I can appreciate it because we do want pay equity for sure, but why we're still classifying jobs as female and male jobs, so that's just a curiosity for me in this day and age, why we're still classifying them based on gender.
Go to you, Ms. Love.
Sure, through the mayor. Yeah, that's a very good question. And one would think we'd be beyond having to look at, and testing for gender gaps. However, the legislation is prevalent, and it is actively, enforced and monitored. So in order to be able to comply, we have to go through an exercise of identifying positions. And that's the only time we have to identify positions, just to ensure we have no pay gaps. So until that legislation changes or is amended, this is a requirement. And I would say, I think public sector employers, it's applicable to all employers. Public sector, regardless of size, and private sector with 10 or more employees. And from a governance standpoint, I know municipalities, this is top of mind, and we just want to make sure we continue to be compliant with the legislation as is currently drafted.
Councilor Nessa?
Yes, thank you for that explanation. I guess it's time for our legislators to get with the program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those questions. Open up to the rest of council. Councilor Kerr.
I have a couple of questions, but that's where we're going. One, you made a statement in the presentation. You talked about 10 comparators in 2024 and all comparators in 2021. Were they the same 10 municipalities that they were compared 2021 versus 2024?
Yes, they were, through the mayor. They were the same, which is not always the case. They seem to be the case this time. They seem to work, and we use the same, which gives us a pretty good sense of how we track.
Thank you. I guess I have a question about the inclusion of Wainfleet, a municipality that has no downtown core per se, has no sewers, has no water, is truly a highly rural municipality without any kind of urban environment. So it just seemed, and their population is significantly lower than the town of Pelham, and their demand for services are significantly different. So I'm just looking at employee numbers and things like that. So that came to mind. I would have thought West Lincoln might have been a little more appropriate to include with an urban core such as Smithville, et cetera, comparable. That's just an overview comment. I was intrigued. I always have fun with math, and when I hear certain terms, they come out. You had on slide, I believe it was 11 or 12, it was a listing of the result of the market review. And your statement there was 7 of the 10 comparators have adopted a pay target above the 50th percentile. If I run averages, the 50th percentile is an average, and if I have 7 of 10 above the average, then my average should be higher. It just doesn't mathematically fit for me. Similarly, the other one was the statement, the 60th percentile is prevalent. Prevalent is a really interesting word because it doesn't define anything. It just means tending towards. Is it 6? Is it 7? Is it 8? What's really meant by the term prevalent? Those are the two things that don't add up to me. How more than half of the people can be higher than the average is telling me that if you add the numbers together, it should be a higher average. So I'm not sure how you can fit that in for me.
But through the mayor, I'll try and speak to it. I'm not sure I'll be able to effectively answer, but I'm going to try. The first reference to the percentile targets that are chosen by the comparator organizations, those are the targets that they have selected, and those targets are reflect their own comparator group. So it's just indicative of the fact that in their pay policy, they don't want to be necessarily at the 50th percentile, sort of the median of their own comparator group. They want to be a little higher. That's what it's telling us.
Okay.
All right. And they don't have the same comparators that we do. So it's just indicative of a practice, if anything. With regards to the use of the word prevalent, and it was chosen by design. It's not the best word, but I have to say that, the targets range, right, from 55th to 70th. There are a number of them that have the 60th. That's all I could say. So I said it's prevalent, all right? It's not the majority, it's prevalent. So there are a number that do. So as I said, it's, I'll just stop there. I'm hoping I've addressed at least some of that question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Love. Councillor Kerr?
Yes, I guess I understand where you're going, and having had to do a lot of mapping of data, know that your median can get skewed when you have significant number changes by one or two of your thing. I'm intrigued by the fact that you're saying that their comparators are not the same as our comparators. So now, how can we compare somebody who's not comparing with the same things that we are? But that's just semantics, I guess, where I run in. The other one is that, you had 5 of the 10 doing reviews. Did their results come in with significant increases compared to where they were previously?
Well, I could say the ones that I've done amongst the comparator group, and yes, there's been increases in every, I would say any municipality that's within your group that I've done work with have had increases. They've been generally at the top end, the mid to the top end. And I've done municipal compensation reviews across the province, a lot of them in 2024. And that trend or observation is prevalent. There's the word prevalent again. It's most often seen, whereby the challenges to the pay structure are at the mid to the upper levels. It's largely due to the age demographic and the shrinking employee population. It puts challenges on employers, municipal employers, in the pay market. That's a common observation, unfortunately. So we need to be able to respond to that. And I would say, this is not just, in order to be able to respond to the challenging pay market, it is not just about the money, but the compensation is a very important part of your attraction and retention strategy. There are other things very important, right? The value proposition, your culture, the way of work in the organization, council staff relations, very important. There are things that will make Pelham the place to be, but competitive pay is also an important element of that.
Okay, Councillor Kerr? Oh, you're good. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Councillor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. One is around pay for performance through the grid, and the other one is there was a comment made by the presenter about certain areas of our examination of our pay system here that were doing quite well and others needed adjustment. My experience 16, 17 years ago doing the first pay equity with my former employee, so the ones that are doing well, just for everybody's benefit, there's not a recommended change to that. Everybody doesn't get an increase across the board. That's not what this process is about. Am I correct in assuming that?
Ms. Love?
Yes, that's correct. So where the job rates or the maximum pay rates are competitive, we've retained those. However, we've needed to adjust them to get them into 25. So all of the job rates or max rates are adjusted to get into 25. But in terms of preparing that 2024 framework, the straw dog, if you will, coming out of the assessment, the increases were in bands 1 and 2 and 8 to 15. We didn't touch the bands in between. We just carried them forward because they're already competitive, okay?
Right, so the only increase for those other ones that you say are doing quite well would be that cost of living increase. That's across the board. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you. Right. And the other one was just to do with the grid system. So it said that you step through the grids. There's 5 grids, I believe you said. And to advance to the next grid, it's based on performance. So it's not an automatic grid advancement. You have to be showing that you're doing the job well to advance to the next pay grid. Am I assuming again correctly?
Well, that's my assumption as well, but I think what you'd want to, and that's the practice, that is the best practice, and I think you want to more specifically direct that question to either HR or to your CAO, and they can tell you exactly how they administer.
Yes, and I saw her nodding her head, waiting to answer me, so go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you are correct. We do monitor performance throughout the year, and they do have to go through a formal performance review. They do need to get at least a successful rating on the performance review in order to move on to the next step on the grid. So yes, it is performance-based.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions, Deputy Mayor Eckert. To Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, thank you very much for all the work that you've done on this and your presentation. I do have a couple of questions. The first one probably pertains to back in 2021, and we had the comparators, these exact comparators. I'm not sure if anyone at that time asked why Tillsonburg and Kingsville were on that list. Kingsville is 371 kilometers away from us, and Tillsonburg's 129 kilometers away from us. And I can't recall why we didn't question that at that point in time. But surely to goodness, there's got to be other comparators that are closer to us. Because if we're looking at competition for top talent, I wouldn't think that Kingsville is a serious competitor for most of the pay bands there. Perhaps maybe the CAO pay band, but a lot of the other ones, no. And to continue on with those two municipalities, what are their percentiles? Are they above 55%, which would skew this whole report, or are they at 55% or below?
Ms. Love, my CAO wants to answer this first. Thank you. Mr. Cribbs?
So I don't know what their percentiles are, and I'll leave that to the expertise of Ms. Love and or Ms. Langor, whoever has that knowledge. But 4 years ago, when we did go through this exercise, that the coming up with those comparators was discussed ad nauseum by predecessor council. Certainly, we did take a number of questions on that. And there is obviously there's a lot of science to this and intellectual rigor, but there's also a bit of art and a bit of underlying philosophy. And Tillsonburg is within 100 people, Pelham's population. It's almost a perfect comparator. It is has a higher per capita income than its immediate neighbors. Sound familiar? It's within 100 people, our population. It's a sort of a magnet area relative to its neighbors. And its growth trajectory very similar. So for those reasons, it was intellectually, it was and we had access to its data also, nothing. Kingsville, fairly similar also. It's immediately adjacent to Leamington, where there's far more industry, not relatively little in Kingsville, but also a fairly affluent community. It's about 4,000 bigger than Pelham is now, but close population-wise and very similar demographics, so also leading to fair comparator. One of our challenges then and now, and maybe it'll be different 4 years from now, but self-evidently, we pretend Welland and St. Catharines don't exist in this exercise, and geography, as Ms. Love has pointed out, is a key factor. So we're sandwiched by two much larger cities to the north and south, and Thorold we do compare ourselves with. But we know that those cities use, their comparator groups are, well, each other, and then several other larger cities. And it will have, in fact, I'd be thrilled if council wanted to order the inclusion of St. Catharines and Welland in our comparator group. That would, I can guarantee you, without having to go through the exercise, that will be inflationary to the data. So we're trying to, the philosophy was to have some that are very fair comparators, and if very fair comparators are floating upwards, that's a sign for us to compare ourselves directly with very large. We have the problem that we do in fact lose staff periodically to the large cities that sandwich us, and occasionally we steal staff back. There is a circle of life thing that happens in Niagara. But we know that if we include the large cities that are our immediate neighbors, it will have an upwards trend for sure, far more than Tillsonburg, which is also almost exactly 19,000 people, as are we, and Kingsville, which is now just, I think, about 21, although I stand to be corrected, maybe they've hit 22. In any event, it is, that is where some of the art came in, and where we were trying to ensure that we weren't gaming the system for ever upwards. That's clearly why Wainfleet's included. That is meant to be, if you look at those municipalities, you'd expect Grimsby to come in with higher numbers, you'd expect Wainfleet to come in with lower numbers. I think there's a considerable effort both then and now to be intellectually rigorous and to accurately depict competitive municipalities and where their trend line is. We most certainly could include West Lincoln, and I would imagine the next time we do this, we're going to have to. They're up to 16,000, which isn't far away from our 19, and their growth, their target population is 49,000, which means one day they'll be far larger than is Pelham, and Grimsby for that matter. They're going to outgrow all of their neighbors. So that will become an increasingly important comparator, and at that time one assumes that one of those two that's geographically remote would be removed for it. But geography is only one of those things. And I mean, from here, we can all get to the region of Niagara's headquarters in 10, 12 minutes. And if we want to include other comparators, I'd love to compare Pelham salaries to the region of Niagara. But we don't, because we know the impact that would have. We are trying to be conservative in this exercise. Those are my comments. I don't know the percent, but to answer Councillor Wink's direct question, I don't know what their targets are. Hopefully Mary Ann Love does. I think she does work for at least one of those municipalities, if not both.
Ms. Love, any answers to those two questions?
Yes, the first question, I think your CIO has answered it just as I would have in probably greater detail. So he's bounced it right back up to the criteria for selection. And I think, and his reflection on perhaps taking a look at the comparator composition the next round makes a lot of sense. That's what we would be doing. So with regards to the percentiles for the others, the other two, Kingsville is at the 60th. Tillsonburg was recommended the 65th. I believe that's what they adopted. And, as I said, they have very different comparators than you folks do. So it's not the same math. It's indicative of an orientation, of a trend, of a reflection on, by each of these organizations, that they look at their own comparator group and they determine what the percentile target is that's best for them. And that's what's going on across the province. For years and years and years, it was the practice was the 50th percentile. We don't want to lead, we don't want to lag, we want to be right in the middle. And for, the last, say, 5-10 years, that thinking has changed. So there's greater precision and frequency putting to the comparison to the competitive team market, just as briefly reflected upon this morning.
Thank you. Go to Councillor Wing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on the report? I'll go to Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Going back to 2021 and the priorities that we had at that time, we were addressing a number of priorities, and we chose what I would call a competitive compensation and benefits as part of our response to a specific situation that we were faced with. But we also did things like provide growth opportunities for the staff. effective communications. And I wrote down empowerment, responsibility, and accountability, and secure employment. And I think we've created a situation that's a very desirable situation, in my opinion. And I think we have arrived at a situation where we can say that we have a superior staff in this town. So I think this is all part and parcel of where we must continue to go on. And I recall thinking about it at the time and discussions among councilors that we want to make a progressive step here, and I think we made the right decision in 2021, and I believe this is the proper one as well. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for those, Councilor Olson. I believe Councilor Kerr.
Yeah, just one last question. Assumption, you're just looking at the pay grids, not the number of people in total as part of those pay grids, correct? In other words, if I'm looking at a municipality and I ran a numbers game and said, how many management and non-union employees are there in the town of Pelham compared to the number of management and non-union employees in another municipality, playing the number of residents relative, the ratios, right? A number of people per person or per capita or serviced, et cetera. But I'm assuming this is just the grids themselves that you're looking at.
Ms. Love?
In that?
That's correct. We're just looking at the grids. Once we've selected them based on criteria for selection, we've looked at their grids, their organization charts, and then done a position match.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other questions on the report? I see Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to reflect back on 2021. The changes we made back in 2021 are reflected by the staff and the quality of staff that we've retained and have come to Pelham in the last few years. And I think that was indicative what our goal was at that time. And I believe moving forward, our goal should be to maintain that similar position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I see no other comments. Just one comment that I'd like to make. We are doing the same thing at the region. Regional staff tells us, I believe we're at it's either 48 or 50 percentile now, and the region wants us to go to 60. And the pay where we are now at the region, the CAO made the presentation to council that people will apply to the region, and as soon as they get to the compensation for the job, the conversation stops. So even though Ms. Love stresses that there are other things that employees look at, and I'm sure they are, the number one, maybe it's not the number one, but right up there, one or two, if you're not offering a competitive wage, 9 times out of 10, the conversation does stop. So again, it's great to see that as a town, as a council, that we are staying relevant to what's happening in the other municipalities. And again, going back to 21, because we had let that slide, it was quite a jump when we on 21. This to keep relevant, it's put in perspective to what happened in 2021. This is not, the report isn't asking for a huge amount, and it's not going to take a huge amount to stay relevant and to keep our compensation rates at the comparative level. That's I know at the region it's going to cost us a bit because we have let it slide for quite a while. So anyway, those are my comments. I'll go around the table one last time. Any more questions to Ms. Love? I see none. Ms. Love, thank you very much for your report. Very thorough, and have a great day.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for your accommodating me this morning and for your time and your questions. Have a good meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Deputy Mayor Eckert, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council received the 2025 non-union compensation review presentation from Marianne Love of ML Consulting for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on to the report? Not seeing any. All those in favor? All those opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. That brings you to the adoption of council minutes. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. CO1-2025 regular council meeting, January 15th, 2025. To you, Mr. Mayor, for any errors or omissions.
Yep, thank you. After reviewing the minutes, any councilor member have any comments about errors or omissions? Not seeing any. Call the vote. All those in favor? And I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item 8. If there are any items in which council would like to lift from the consent agenda, now would be the time.
Okay, thank you. After viewing the consent agenda list, is there any item that any councilor would like to lift for further discussion? Councilor Kerr.
9.1.1.
Okay, thank you. Any other items? Councilor Olson.
Mr. Mayor, this is for discussion, is that correct?
Well, no, if you want to lift an item that you want to change the motion to.
Okay, thank you. I'll just have some for discussion. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councilor Kerr, unless you want to change the motion that is on that agenda, like when you read it, no, okay, you just want to comment on the meeting and stuff. Okay, sorry for that confusion. Okay, thank you. So then there's no council that wants to lift items. I'll turn to the clerk.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then that brings us to our consent agenda. It is not a lengthy one today, so we can call it into categories, the first being staff reports.
Let's go to Councilor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to see there's going to be a drainage open house. I guess my comments come back to, because it was so close to me with the recent Keenan drain, municipal drain repair, and let's just say the rather large response by a large number of people receiving a bill that had no concept that they were part of a municipal drain. I think there's a significant situation where the mechanism of advertising this open house is still going to miss a huge number of people because they haven't got a concept at all that they are obligated to pay for municipal drain repairs. So I guess what I'm asking is how can we ensure that this information gets into the hand? An example being a phenomenal number of people within the Cherry Ridge subdivision received a bill, and they'd had no clue. They had recently moved in. I'm sure their lawyer didn't talk to them at all to say that they were part of this, so they had no concept. And suddenly, I know that the Director of Public Works received a ton of phone calls, and I'm sure there's other parts within the municipality where there's urban people paying into a municipal water line. So I just trying to find a way that, and encouraging that we find a way to let these people know so that they understand that, yes, you are part of a municipal drain and have to pay for the repairs and maintenance therein.
Okay, thank you. I will go to Director of Public Works, who is also our drainage person. Mr. Mark.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. So appreciate the comments. We'll work with our staff to get the word out through social media, any outlets we can use to get the message out regarding the information for the open house. It'll also be posted on our website, and we'll direct traffic to that. We can actually, I have talked to Leah, and she can set it up so that there's a pop-up that comes up that when you go onto the Pelham website, you're notified of that, and you have to close that down before you can move on. So that's another option that we can do to make sure we get the word out. With respect to notification on municipal drains and whether you're part of one or not, that is an issue. In the case of Cherry Ridge, that was a large vacant rural piece of land that became subdivided. And when that ownership goes from one owner to many owners, the reapportionment is completed to reassess that portion of their size of the property for the drain. Every property owner I spoke to was not made aware of that through either the real estate agent or through the purchasing process for the property. I also recently became a member of the DSAO, which is the Drainage Superintendents of Ontario, their board of directors. So I'm sitting on that as well. And I can tell you that through conversations with that group, they are looking to work with the Ontario government to develop a homeowner's guide. When you buy a house, there'll be a homeowner's guide that explains the municipal drain, how that works, what the responsibilities are for the homeowner. So that's not in place yet, but those works are in progress, and hopefully is something that can come up in the next year or so. So when somebody buys a house, they're made aware of the responsibilities under the Drainage Act.
Councillor Kerr?
Thank you. I'm kind of a follow-up to that. Are there other significant parcels within the town of Pelham that have been developed within the last 20 years that are similar to the Cherry Ridge situation, that there's a large number of property owners that are now part of the payment program? Many of the people within Cherry Ridge had no clue that it was there because they never see anything relative to a municipal drain until there's a bill for repairs. And that's when suddenly it appears to them. So for them to think to go to a meeting, for the average person within the town of Pelham, municipal drains don't fit to them. In fact, a lot of them think that they're part of our regular drain system. And said, well, aren't we paying this in our taxes already? Isn't this part of the storm drains? Well, no, it's not. It's a different situation. So I guess that's kind of the lead up I have. The Cherry Ridge people have been, as they say, they've been warned because they got the flag and they got the notice. But are we going to have another area within the town suddenly where there's a requirement for a significant repair, where a lot of development has occurred since maybe the last repair was made, because they won't know anything about it?
To the director, do you know on the number of people that are indeed affected by municipal drains in the town? I know it's pretty large.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't have that number readily available. I can get that information. We can look into that. One of the other things that we've recently done is we've created a GIS layer on our GIS system, which shows the municipal drains and the watersheds that are impacted by those drains or affected by those drains. So if your property falls within one of those watersheds, you're contributing to a municipal drain. So that's something that we've recently developed, and we can push that out as well as part of this advertising, and we'll definitely have that on hand the night of the meeting.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes, I think that the more we can inform people of what their obligations are, the less we get the multitude of phone calls and say, well, you should know better. Well, sometimes maybe they didn't know where to look or how to find it or think about it.
Councillor Kerr, Councillor Wink.
Yeah, so is there an opportunity here that tax notices are going out shortly, that those people who got tagged with the additional levy for the municipal drains recently, that we put in with their tax notices? Yes or no? Just a thought. But we put the public meeting notice in along with their tax notices.
I'll go to the Director of Treasury.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's about 7,000 bills that go out, so we would have to find them and pull them in order to do that. I'll talk to the Director of Public Works and the Communication Coordinator to see if we can put an insert in there. Maybe the map will help. If there's a map there to say, if you live in this area, then you could potentially have a drain, please come to the open house. So that way we can address everyone, and somebody might want to come if they're just interested as well.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ms. Quinlan Murphy, for that. Any other questions on staff reports in the consent agenda? Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to talk about 9.1.5, which is the RCW, and there's a chart on page 1 of the report that indicates the number of hours that user groups ice rentals, and at 2023 it was basically 1,200 hours, and then we have 1,200 hours in 2024. And I would like to ask the RCW representative what if that indicates that we're at capacity for the user groups?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Manager?
Yes, you are correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So these would be a part of existing agreements that we have, and space is fairly limited right now for ICE users.
So that means that we're at capacity for the user groups on. I didn't quite clearly hear you there. So.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to your the first meeting. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on any consent agenda? Before I move on from that 91.9.1.5, just a humongous number at 577,000 guests. That's a crazy number for a town of 18,000 to have going through our community center. I think that says a lot to the programs that our staff makes available to the public, and obviously being so well received by so many, and not just the town, but obviously the region. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add to 9.1.6 Public Works report. There's a part in there talk about LED light conversion. The Public Works Department didn't put a lot of data on it other than it's completed. Let me add some highlights to that, which I think are fantastic. That was the single source largest percentage energy saving project to date completed by Pelham. Realterm did the work. This is the estimate they had. We were originally starting with 817 kilowatts, and we were going to go down to 866 kilowatts. Our actual numbers turned out to be, we started at 792,168 kilowatts, and we went down to 291,516 kilowatts, which means we had an annual savings of 500 and 652 kilowatts. The estimated greenhouse gas reduction from the street house luminaires over their lifetime is 1,217 metric tons of greenhouse gases. Let me tell you what a metric ton of greenhouse gas. 1 metric ton of greenhouse gas is the equivalent of driving 4,500 kilometers. That's driving from Toronto to Vancouver. Or if you're heating houses, if you heat your house, it's the equivalent of 39 metric tons of greenhouse gas. So we're saving the equivalent of 31 homes heating in greenhouse gases by this project. So the staff did a fantastic job, and I just want to say how pleased we are to be part of that. Thank you.
Yes, very impressive numbers for sure, Councillor Hildebrand. Thanks for bringing them forward. Excellent. While we're on Public Works, I have a question. I see the bridge, call it a bridge, on Roland Road. I believe that's just east of Belfort Street, and right now there are 2 culverts, and I see they're being replaced by precast culverts. I'm wondering what is the money differential between going to culverts again, which we have been doing up until over there on, I believe that's Church Street. Why are we going to the precast concrete on this particular job, at least?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's a question I'm going to have to get back to you on with respect to the engineering reasons for that. What I will say is that this project, it's coming up in a report further down the agenda, but this was a project that wasn't going to be completed, I think, until 2027. And because of the possible deferral of one of our major capital projects that was supposed to happen this year on Campbell Road. This is one of the projects that we are working on the design ahead of time, so we have a shovel-ready project. If, again, future debate here, but if council approves that report, then we'll transfer our efforts over to that bridge to complete the design. It's probably at about 90% complete now. It won't take long to finalize that design package, so I can get back to you with those details, the engineering reasons why we're using a precast culvert, but that's an answer that the engineer would have to provide to me.
Okay, thank you, and I apologize for not getting a hold of you before the meeting and warning you of that question. And I appreciate the fact. I wait for when you get back to me on that. Thank you very much. Any other questions? This side, Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. There's comments in the report stating that the region is looking at rerouting the main trunk line through Pancake Lane up to the new water tower. Is there going to be other streets impacted by that new trunk line? So we're looking at Pancake Lane here and the tower over here, yet there's no direct route. So what other areas are going to be impacted?
To the Director, Mr. Moore.
To you, Mr. Mayor. So the region's working through the design phase now. It's been going on for probably a year or so now. We're a part of that team. We had planned on reconstructing Pancake Lane, replacing the water main on that section as well, putting storm sewers in, urbanizing it. And when the region started talking about their project, right now the transmission main comes from Schultz Reservoir up Bigelow Crescent and then heads north on Hay Street to Highway 20 over to the water tower, which sits behind the Fire Station 1. When the new tower goes in, which will be behind the driving range at Lookout, there will be a new transmission main that will come down Lookout Street to Highway 20, an upgrade to that transmission main on Highway 20, and then they to service East Fawn Hill, but the feed from Schultz Reservoir remains, and that feed, instead of going up Bigelow now, because we're looking at reconstructing Pancake Lane, they're taking the opportunity to run their water main transmission line up Pancake. So it will go from Pancake, from Schultz Reservoir, up Pancake Lane, all the way up Haste, all the way down Highway 20, Lookout to the new tower.
So does the new trunk line have to be replaced on Hayes Street also, or can the existing trunk line just be connected to it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, details I need to get from the region, but from my understanding, it's going to be a new main. There will be, Hay Street will be disturbed.
So at whose cost will Hay Street be borne by? Is that on Pelham's back, or is that on the region's back?
Those costs will be absorbed by the region. That'll be a regional project. They will restore it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Councilor Wink. Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question for the Director of Public Works. I noticed in the report that there was a surprise compliance audit on the quality of our drinking water, and we passed with flying colors. I believe the rating was 100%. So that is something that should be recognized, because the fact is it was a surprise audit, which means that we're doing the right thing every day. And that's important to have integrity in our system. The second thing I would like to ask is about the slope stabilization projects and design. And specifically, I'm looking at, as an example, the one at Spencer Lane in Marlene Stewart Street Park. And it strikes me that I wanted to ask about the potential for a green solution to that problem. And if green is being considered in all of our other projects as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. Any other comments, questions?
I have the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to my clerk. I apologize.
Yeah, well, I could answer.
Go ahead.
Hopefully I don't get to ask a question now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So council did approve a project for design on 3 slope stabilization areas. One was on Center Street, just north of Roland Road. One is at the end of Spencer Lane at Marlene Stewart Street Park, and that's the photo that's actually in the report. And then also a slope failure that's happening on River Road. So the consultants working with our engineering staff to develop alternatives for those solutions. At this point in time, we haven't finalized what those will be, but any slope stabilization work that happens in a naturalized environment will include green solutions for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And my apologies. I shouldn't be talking to the clerk when a councilor is addressing. And I'll turn, any other questions, comments on that section of the agenda, consent agenda? Back to Council Olson.
Yes, this is for community planning and the Director of Community Planning, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I was wondering, I wanted to make a comment about the report on the Pelham Greenbelt Natural Asset Plan, which we have received and has been, I got to say, widely acclaimed in the paper. I've seen it mentioned in the Pointer and different places. But now we come to the stage where we have to energize this plan because it's quite a strong document, and it leads us in the proper direction, I think, as far as the ecology of the town. So I was just wondering if we could get a comment from the director on what or the CAO on what the direction is to energize this plan that we have in front of us now.
Thank you, Councilor, and I will turn to the Director of Planning, Ms. Doosling.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Councilor Olson, that's a great question, and yes, it is a fantastic plan, and we are excited about implementing it this 2025 year. That being said, it's still early in the year, and we are in discussions about how we are going to implement that. I know we're looking towards working with our colleagues in Public Works because, of course, there's natural assets and general assets that we can work together in implementing. And we're also doing some good work with the Greening the Consortium, which we may be able to piggyback on some projects there as well. So to be determined, but we'll keep council apprised.
Thank you. Councilor? Oh, I'm sorry, to Ms. Quinlan Murphy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add to that, the Greenbelt Foundation, which founded the original study, has just come out with new funding. So it's one of the things that we're going to talk about at our senior leadership team meeting today to see if this project, the next phase of this project, would be what we would bring forward. So there is opportunity for funding to move the project forward.
Well, that's very good news. Thank you. Councilor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a perfect example of opportunity arising from the hard work that's been done on these projects, because if you're behind, you just don't get a chance at these projects in the first. I wanted to ask a question about the Greening for the Landscape Research Consortium, and it said we're going to have a 3-year pilot project with 2 projects, and I just wanted to ask about them.
To the Director, Planning.
Yeah, again, through the Mayor to Councilor Olson, another good question. So we are just in the preliminary stages of discussing with the consortium what research we'll be involved with here in Pelham. We actually have a training session with them tomorrow, and then we're expecting a meeting where they will outline who's going to be in what project in terms of partnerships. But we have requested that we would like to be involved with revitalizing soil health, and or reviewing our hardscape technologies and strategies, which I think would be a really important one here in Pelham. And then, of course, restoring our woodlots. So those are the 3 that we're targeting and hopeful to build partnerships with.
Yes, Council.
Thank you. Okay. And finally,
yes,
I just wanted to recognize the fact that our Chief Building Officer has been recognized as a Next Generation Excellent Leader Award, and I think that's something that we should celebrate as a group. And I want to remind all members of council that these are the sorts of the staff that we have working in the town. So Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can ask good questions.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very impressed. Thank you, Council Olson, and especially bringing that last piece of information to Council's attention. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this particular part of the consent agenda program? Not seeing any. Turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and then there's just one set of advisory committee minutes on the agenda as well.
Okay. Any comment on the committee agenda minutes? Oh, adjustment, yeah, Committee of Adjustment minutes. Any comment on those? Not seeing any. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Therefore, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the January 29th, 2025 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other, one last time, any other comments or questions on any consent agenda items? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to reports from members of council. And this morning we have an update from Councillor Kerr regarding the Niagara Central Airport Commission.
Excellent. Councillor Kerr, you have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to update council on what's been going on with the Airport Commission over the past year. When I created the summary, it was kind of interesting to see how many different things had actually transpired. As I say, some happily and some not so happily, I guess I will report. The first off was that a new facility operator was hired, as the previous one only lasted about 17 months, but that was because he got a job as a full-time pilot, flying executives around everywhere. So I think that was a much better gig than being the facility operator at the Airport Commission, so I can't fault him. But the new gentleman has very good background in media and advertising, and his part of his rationale was to promote and advertise and expand and look at all the alternatives. So it's nice to have a fresh face come in, and he's quite amenable and easy to deal with. Hangar 2 was built. A new hangar for 5 airplanes was completed. It's fully occupied, rented out. We have tenants in all of them. Access roads were completed to them to get to the aprons, as well as the installation of appropriate drainage, which was a real plus. A lot of it was done, as I call it, in-house with the commission people that were working there, rather than having to spend a lot of money on externals to get things done. Probably 2 things that I think were really useful. They have a Discover Aviation Day at the airport for kids to get flights at the airport, and on that day over 100 children had an opportunity to take flights. This was supported by COPA, which is a local pilots association at the airport, and in fact it gets capped at 100 kids because they can't fit any more in on there. Tremendous numbers. This is an opportunity for these children to find out about it, for their families, the airport, it exists, well, what's available there, and it's quite useful. The other was that an international group from England, a group of pilots from Oxford Aviation, came through as part of their North American visits across country. So we had a group go through, again, another chance to highlight the airport. One nice thing that came out is that part of the discussion relative to the airport and the new buildings was the facility operators reached out, and I've spoken with Chief Limburner about developing an emergency services plan for the airport. And they've been, I want to say thank you to the Pelham Fire Department. The training officer has been quite helpful. There will be actually sessions for each of the members of the 3 stations for the Town of Pelham Fire Department to visit on site, go through the process, familiarize with the location, and along with the development of a operating manual for such a thing. It's kind of important, as we found out, a few people talked about, most firefighters don't have to deal with airplanes, especially, I don't think, for our fire department. And an interesting comment came out in the one was, well, what do we do if a person has a heart attack and a plane's out there and the propellers are still spinning? What do we do? Kind of thing. So these are the kind of, it seems really simplistic, but there is a process, and I think this educational level and creating a manual is going to work well, and will be give with our mutual aid fire departments as well, and for EMS. We've completed a formal code of conduct for the commission. As people are aware, there were some issues previously that had come up that wound up going to the ombudsman. These have all been rectified, so operating procedures have been standardized. We're following the municipal act to a T. We read all the applicable things if something's supposed to be closed. We have discussions in closed that are only on that topic now. It's been for me, an educational process coming from the council operations to the commission operations, and at times I find it somewhat interesting that I have a tendency to redirect things, and I'm the rookie at the table. So it's a year of transition, and the other thing was that when you enter the airport, there's really an east and a west side to the airport. The roadways have been given names, again, for identification for EMS and the fire. The two roads are McRitchie Way to the west and Kerr Drive to the east. McRitchie after one of the big proponents for the airport, and Kerr Drive after my father. So the signs are up, so again, it's another thing for people entering, being able to get around. The one item that came up and people have been sort of watching has been, in 2023, we had, moving into 24, were 2 tenant lease negotiations. Interestingly, one worked out, as I call it, very well. It went through with one of the tenants, and it was successfully completed for continuance of their staying. However, one tenant, the original commission had written a contract such that it was limited to the only thing that could be reviewed after 10 years. Most of the leases on property are for 20 years, but with renewals either every 5 or every 10. And the 10-year renewal came up with this tenant, and it was strictly on what they were paying for a rental agreement. And the only thing negotiating was that it was to be at fair market value. The tenant wanted to stay strictly with cost of living from 10 years ago. Well, as we all know, that's really not there. Because it wasn't, an agreement wasn't reached, it was pushed to arbitration. An arbitration hearing was held. The arbitrator, so the commission had an appraisal done of the properties to get a sense of the value for rental agreements. They did so. This was provided to a panel of 3 arbitrators, not just one. It went to 3. Each side contributed 1, and then a third arbitrator came from. So let's just say that wasn't inexpensive, but it was more, rather than, it was just a decision made. The arbitrator came back and ruled in favor of the commission. The tenant decided, but not fully the amount that the commission had asked for, but it was a lower amount than what we had submitted. But the tenant decided that they would not go with that. The amount awarded was retroactive to 2023 when the 10-year lease was up. So as a result, we have a significant arrears. The tenant left as of the 31st of December this year, and along with it, for those that travel by the airport, that's also the vanishing of all of the trailers that were sitting on site at the commission. To say the least, for some now it looks like an airport rather than a campground. So in a way, sometimes you have to take steps back and willing to bite the bullet. They're actively seeking new tenants. Right now, we're doing a full review of the Hangar 1 for its structure, safety, and everything else. I mean, before we can rent it out again, which is, so engineers are going through just to double check things and see what upgrades potentially might have to happen relative to it. I mean, for those that are unaware, that Hangar 1 was built in the 1940s. It was to be the backup for the Dunnville Airport, where they were training pilots for World War II. So that Hangar 1 is an old building. In fact, all the trusses internally are all wood. And with a huge flat roof like that and a wood truss, it's let's just say it was impressive engineering at the time and still is. So we're looking at that. There have been inquiries already for rental of it. We're looking at other alternatives. The facility operator has been investigating. We've had interest from people thinking about flight schools coming in there, airport, aircraft repairs, all kinds of different things. So right now, it's a new world for the commission in 2025. We have space available, but we also want to look at how do we optimize the use of the space. And part of our hope is that the region fulfills what it says. There is supposed to be the reconstruction, repaving, and improvement of Regional Road 529, which will go all the way from Effingham Street past the O'Reilly's Bridge to the front of the airport. That's actually a section of Regional Road on River Road that's not Town of Pelham Road. So we're hoping that they fulfill it and upgrade it in 2025. And we've approached the region as well to put up an LED streetlight at the entrance to the airport, because for those familiar with River Road on a foggy night, it's not an easy road to traverse, and even to find the airport sometimes can be a real challenge. So we're hoping that can be put in place. But things, like I say, things are on the up and up, and we're going forward. Arbitration and legal fees and everything was not a cheap event, but it was something that we had to go through. Otherwise, we would have been remiss in acting in the best interests of the 4 municipalities that are I guess we'll call it the airport owners for that. So that was our decision that was made. So that's my report for the Airport Commission for 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. One thing, if I may, before I open it to council, and again, I apologize for not giving you a heads up. For I don't know how many years, Notre Dame has had a class in there. Is that still there?
To my knowledge, that's not still ongoing.
Oh, okay.
In terms of formally having a class, but we're reviewing everything that goes in there. Again, the Airport Commission also houses the Air Cadets as well.
Yes.
And one thing that was done is that the Commission did give a grant to the Air Cadets. There's no lease charge for them for their facility, but they're responsible for the maintenance and care of it. As we all know, Air Cadets are not a high fund organization, so they look at leveraging wherever they can get money, and that was part of what the Commission chose to do for 2025. So we're very supportive of what they do and everything else. And like I said, we're hoping to put the airport a little bit more on the map. We have capacity where we are to have more flights come in. And to be honest, with the restrictions at the Niagara District Airport in terms of its ability to expand or do anything, it's pretty restrictive. So we see with all of the industrial development within the peninsula that airport actually could turn out to be a little more used by some people than has been in the past. And we're in an industrial corridor which has been identified at the federal development level. So they're looking at that as a transportation connection as well.
Excellent. Thank you for those remarks. I'll open up to council. Any report, any questions, comments? Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think I first became aware of the airport in 2021, and I think my first request for the airport was a business plan, and I have a specific concern about in asking for that. And number one is at some point it was stated that the airport will become self-sustaining, and there won't be a requirement for funds to be given to the airport by the town of Pelham and the other members. The second concern I have is there was a feasibility study and a business plan that was done in, it was dated the January the 12th, 2020, or 2020, yes, correct? And it indicated at that time that between the years 2020 and 2025, where we are today, the airport required in maintenance $4.725 million worth of work, and that was accepted by the region as a document of having legitimacy. And if that proves to be the case, our share of that money is going to be $850,000. $850,000 equates to approximately 4.68 increase in our taxes if that has to be done. So again, I'll ask for where are we on a business plan for this? Because if we walk out here and say to our residents that we have to raise taxes by another 4.68%, that's not going to be easy, and that's in 2020 dollars. That's not in 2025 dollars. So I think there's a reasonable expectation of a business plan, because that's a big number and it's a lot of concern.
Okay.
So I would like to ask a question about the business plan again.
I guess I'll respond to the $4.75 million of upgrades. I don't see $4.75 million worth of upgrades at that site. The landing strips, the function of the operation of the facility is nowhere near that, and they have been fixed. So I won't venture down that path of saying the municipality's on the hook for $800,000. I think that's patently wrong from everything that I've seen at the airport. The second part is from the business plan standpoint, because we've been tied up in arbitration, we've been locked into a series of things financially with trying to get a tenancy, getting all of our leases uniform, getting them updated. The business plan will be done, but it's not going to be done within this quarter by any stretch. It's something that we have to have a better summary of the facilities on site, what exactly is the condition of those facilities, which is being done, and then you can move forward from there. The cost to the town of Pelham at this point, if we look at it relative to with one member on the commission and the percentages, yes, it costs the town of Pelham. I will throw out that the regional municipality of Waterloo subsidizes their airport to the tune of almost $5 to $6 million a year. Very different than what's coming from the town of Pelham at about $30,000 plus. So saying we're on the hook, I think, is a bit of a red herring at this stage of the game. If it's going to be that, I will bring this to council and let everybody. But you've moved into a situation. In 2020, there was also the decision, there was a suggestion of amalgamation at the regional level of airports, among other things, and that was turned down. So I appreciate your concern. Yes, we are working on it. We have one facility operator. We have the 7 commission members. We have a part-time bookkeeper. We are not flush with staff that can go into the degree of what can happen at the municipal level. Yes, we're going to move down that road. There are other things coming. I know that's coming up in the strategic plan discussions that we're going to have moving forward. I would suggest that maybe at those points that we take a look at it. But there will be a business plan, but I cannot promise you exactly a date in which it will occur.
Thank you, Councilor.
Well, I have to respond to the idea of a red herring and misleading, because I have a list here of items that a professional group indicated were required at the airport, and I'll read them off. And I've heard this from the pilots who've said that these are things that need to be done. So I have a list here, starting with the rehabilitation of runway 1634. Next is runway 0523 rehabilitation. Next is the taxiway Bravo, which comes to this year, the first year alone is $2.4 million. So to compare the airport at Waterloo with this one, I mean, is not really, they're not really comparable. That's used for, Waterloo is used for international flights, repairs, heavy repairs, freight, and it's got also got scheduled flights all over the world. It's an international airport. So I've been there and seen that and talked to the airport manager about it, and that's true. They do get that, and we also spoke to the regional chair, and they're happy with that. But this is something that you know, it's easy to say, well, why isn't it just on paper and say this is the business plan, and then we can deal with it. But I don't see why we just, you know, you say this is fallacious and red herring and all the rest of the stuff. We're in a situation where we used to pay $24,000 and now we're $31,000. I mean, there's people around who would deserve an explanation of that, I think. And further to that, I would like to ask the treasurer a question. When it comes to these budgets for the airport, I believe the Airport Act says that the budget for the airport has to be approved by this council. and I'm looking at Section 4 of the Airport Act, and I'd like to have an interpretation of that, not today, but at some point. But it reads that the commission shall annually submit a budget to the councils of Welland, Port Colborne, Pelham, and Wainfleet. And I don't recall in 5 years, I don't recall ever seeing something like that.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, we include the budgeted amount as part of our operating budget. So there is one page in the operating budget, which is the airport, and that's where you saw the slight increase from the airport's request. So we can in the future for 2026, if you would like for us to share the full airport budget, we can do that. Just right now, it is included as a one-page summary in our operating budget. Very small dollars, like less than 40,000, but it is there for any questions from council.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Obviously, you have some detailed questions. I don't think it's fair to ask our representative on the commission to answer them at this time. And if you desire answers to those questions, I believe the commission would welcome it in a letter form. Thank you. And if I may, before that, I recently had a lunch with your chairman, and he assured me, and I didn't even ask the question, but he assured me at the time that the business plan, I believe you're going to an outside consultant to help with that, a friend of his, so it's not going to be $1 million bill, but it seems like the business plan is indeed going to be a priority in the very near future.
Through you, yes, Mr. Mayor, actually the federal development is also being approached because we've had some interest at the federal level from the local member of parliament about following up, as he currently is attached to international trade and commerce. So yes, we're looking at it. Our operating budget for the entire commission on an annual basis is peanuts relative to an awful lot of even other organizations that the town works with. So yes, things are coming.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councilor Olson, you did have any other comments or not?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other questions, comments on the Councilor's report? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that Council receive the verbal update from Councillor Kerr regarding the Niagara Central Airport Commission for information. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries. To the clerk.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And perhaps before we move on, and now would be a good time for a break.
Yes, I believe that's an excellent idea. We'll take a 5 or 10 minutes biological. Thank you.
That one of 50 years.
That one at Niagara Falls is
No. Well, gotta be 16, 17.
Sarah, can you just unmute?
Yeah. Nice.
It is.
Biggest problem with DQ was the suicide.
I'll do it.
Somebody got involved in health and safety when they said the lead content was only through the roof. So we had to do all training had to be moved out of Norwich, which then restricted our training schedule.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, council, I see we have everyone back on seated, so I'll turn to the clerk and we shall continue.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item 11.2, staff reports requiring action. And our first item is 11.2. Our first item is 11.2.1 regarding the reallocation of 2025 capital funds for project RD02/25 road reconstruction Canberra Road from Hay Street to Highway 20. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Eckert. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2025-0027 for information, and that Council approve the deferral of project RD02/2025 road reconstruction of Canberra Road from Hay Street to Highway 20 to a future capital budget in the amount of $3,200,000. And that Council approve a 2025 capital project for the detailed design of Emmett Street and College Street in the amount of $250,000. And that Council approve a 2025 capital project for the bridge replacement at Roland Road in the amount of $1,250,000. And that Council approve a 2025 capital project for the detailed design of Church Hill in the amount of $200,000. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any member of council have comments, questions on this report? I go to Deputy Mayor Eckert.
Just two questions for the Director of Public Works. Can you remind me what the region's timelines are then for this project?
The Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the water main installation that would come across Canberra Road at the intersection of Churchill, I don't have an exact date for the installation on that yet. That would be completed as part of the overall water servicing project they're going to be doing with the new elevated tank. That project is tentatively scheduled to start in 2027, and that's how, in the discussions we've had with the region, that's when their projected start date is. Based on their estimates right now, it's probably a 2 to 3 year project by the time they get all the infrastructure done. So it's going to be somewhere in that 2027 to 2029 range.
Thank you. And secondly, the design for Church Hill, which comes off of that Canberra Road extension there. Is that project, can that be a standalone, or does that have to coincide with what goes on with Canberra Road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the idea is that would be a standalone project, would be completed ahead of the urbanization of Canberra Road. So the region, when they come through down Churchill with the water main installation, they will be completing that work with their contractor under their consultant's direction for the installation of their infrastructure. And so they actually approached the town and asked if we would be interested in joining them, very similar to what we're doing with Quaker Road now, to upgrade the services and infrastructure on that section of road. So it'll be run very similar to what Quaker Road is now. I don't have the estimates yet on construction. In the report, I've allowed for a $200,000 design assignment. I think that's very conservative, and I'm happy to report back to council with those numbers once we receive them from the region and their consultant, the estimates for that. But I believe that that budget for design is very conservative.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Eckert. Any other questions? I see Councilor Nesbitt.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your recommendation that you defer this project, because Unlike some other municipalities I've observed over the years, is they'll do a project and then a year later have to dig up the road again, and then a year later they're digging the road up again. So I think it's a pretty major feeding road that feeds a lot of traffic in and out, and it sounds like over the next 5 to 10 years we're going to have a lot of our main roads revived and redone. So making sure that we just do it once and do it once properly is appreciated. So thank you for your forethought on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. To the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item is 11.2.2, non-union compensation review. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2025-0003 for information, and that Council approve the formal adoption of the compensation target of the 60th percentile on average for the comparator group for non-union staff effective March 1st, 2025. And be it further resolved that Council approve the expenditure of $69,264 to implement the change to the town's compensation target, which is offset by benefits and other savings, resulting in a zero net levy increase in 2025. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. This, of course, is the agenda item related to the presentation we had at the beginning of our council meeting. Any comments and questions? Deputy Mayor Eckert.
To the Director, the Treasurer, are you able to, first of all, I accept your reasoning here that it's offset by other savings, but are you able to just flesh that out a little more, offset by benefits and other savings? Like, what is other savings?
So through you, Mr. Mayor. The other savings, actually, what we have is we have the Director of Planning salary currently being allocated 100% to the tax levy, and since she oversees the building department, we are allocating 30% of her salary to the building department, and we think that's more reflective of the work that she's doing overseeing that department. So that's where the savings is coming from.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Eckert. Any other questions, comments? To Councilor Wink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, I guess, directed to the CAO through you. Why was this review not completed prior to Council's approval of the 2025 budget? It just seems that here we are in the end of January and already we're being asked for amendments to the budget and whatever. So just want to know about the timing of that, please.
Mr. CAO.
That's a very fair question. The most important part of the answer is we started the 25 budget in June of 24, 7 months ago. And from the staff perspective, kind of cognitively, we kind of had it locked in September, and it went to print in, I don't remember the exact day, late October, and came to you in early November, roughly. Those numbers are about right. And the reality is we're open 365 days a year. So from a certain perspective, I completely acknowledge why it's not an unfair, unreasonable expectation to say it's a 25 expenditure. We just did the 25 budget 5-6 weeks ago. Why not? And partially, so this is not ideal in the one perspective. But the other is the direction from, albeit previous council, but was to come back 4 years later, so somewhere in 25. So in theory, we had 12 months in which we could have brought it. And from that perspective, honestly, we could have brought it in the 26 budget, passed in 25, I guess, and I think that might have still complied. But so there are those pieces. We knew when we were trying to sort out how to make this work, or the timing issue, last year, the town received quite a significant WSIB refund, and we're happy to, although we don't know the exact value of the refund we're going to get this calendar year, we know that last year it was roughly 40,000. Sorry, 68. Happily stand corrected. So a WSIB return is fundamentally earned by staff working hard to always be safe. That's, you pay X dollars in advance, all employers do, and the rates are very, very dependent on the industry you're in, including this municipal government, and roughly how risky the underlying activities are. So we pay money up front, as all employers are obligated to, and then if you don't have any claims, you got a clean bill of health at the end, you get some money back. And so that's a really kind of, although we couldn't know, and we were optimistic that in November we'd have no injuries in November or December. It did, of course, turn out that way. So we were hoping that a WSIB return would occur and that would pay for a substantial portion thereof. WSIB is, I don't want to say late, but they've let us know we know we have one coming, so we don't know the amount, but the notion was although it's brought out of budget, there is this pool of money coming back that in a fundamental way I would submit to you is earned by employees by management pushing safety, by staff pushing safety, by everyone sort of working towards that end and keeping that as a North Star. So could it have been, we would have had to go and do the data in the middle of 24 to include it in the 25 budget, and then we'd know we'd have older data yet again. And the council directive was to come in 25. So did we get the judgment call right or wrong? It's for you to say and for us, me specifically, to hear. But that was certainly a big part of what guided my thoughts in the process. I see Ms. Quinlan Murphy has some comments to add, but certainly that's indicative of my thought process.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the report wasn't finalized at the time of the budget, as the CEO has mentioned. And also we knew that we found out about our savings for our Green Shield that wasn't notified until after, I think in December, which was after our budget was approved. So we knew we had at least 40,000. The goal here was we wanted to make sure that it was no net increase to the tax levy. So knowing that and knowing that we had different pots of money and we wanted to make sure the report was finalized and we had a chance to have a look at it and do the calculations, it was more of a timing issue why it didn't make it in the budget process.
Thank you. Council?
So I understand that this doesn't have any impact on the existing tax levy, but to be very clear, it's going to have an impact on the tax levy for every year going forward. Yeah. So just a follow-up question. We're currently at the 55 percentile. And back in 2021, we raised it to the 55% because we were finding a lot of staff were leaving to other communities, and we weren't able to attract talented staff as a result of our pay structure. So has the town recently felt the impact of not attracting or retaining staff due to our current compensation?
To the CAO? No.
That's a new personal first.
I believe that's against one of our bylaws that we're just about ready to go.
Well, we haven't passed it yet,
Oh.
so no, that's still copacetic.
Mr. CAO?
What was the question?
Should cats be brought to
Yes,
council? Yeah.
retention. Let me answer that two ways. Firstly, I'm tremendously thrilled and proud of the last half dozen hires or so in the corporation have been exceptionally strong individuals. There's two of them over there right now. So we've been able to attract top-notch A-plus talent. So that's been going very, very well. And council has two options. We've included the data for 55th percentile, which is where we currently stand. And you have, so that part's a request, and council is under no obligation to move to the 60th. But the reason we're recommending the 60th has a lot to do with our future attraction and retention and our marketing of ourselves. 55th is the lowest number I think you can say you're a progressive or above average paying employer. We know our policy is that we do this once every 4 years. You've heard the consultant yet again suggest annually. That becomes an expensive undertaking. But if you're at the 55th and our competitors are moving up, then of course, you're falling down, you're floating downwards. And we've lived through the danger of being in the 40s. So 55 doesn't necessarily give a lot of wiggle room. If you're at the 60th and it floats down a few percent, you can still be above 50. You can flow down. It allows you to only look at it every 4 years and still be relatively competitive. So that's kind of fundamentally the nature of that request. Right now, our last 6, 7, 8 recruitments, maybe the manager of people services can give specific commentary. I've been exceptionally happy with, we've recruited some dynamite people. So part of this is looking at the future. And the other thing to say, Ms. Love, the consultant this morning, was pretty clear that every municipality uses different comparators, so it's different data sets. Ours, I just want to remind council that ours excludes the region of Niagara, the city of St. Catharines, and the city of Welland. And every one of us in this room can drive to every one of those headquarters in 15 minutes, less. And so those are at the 60th percentile, and they're 60th percentile of big places comparing big wages to each other. And so I think it's reasonable to assume that if we stay at 55th amongst relatively small comparators, but fair ones, we're going to end up in a problem relative to neighbors, immediate neighbors, where actually a lot of our staff live. They're paying 60th in a bigger pool of bigger numbers. So I worry about the roads diverging from a strategic perspective. Those of us who were around last council certainly suffered from us being in the 40s. And so I think it's a good strategic option. Now, of course, it's up to council to decide whether you can afford that. This year, if you agree with the suggestion, it's cost less than $4,000. And Councillor Wink, you're absolutely correct. That's there forevermore and will have an impact on next year's tax levy. So that's absolutely the case. But it's really about keeping us where we need to be strategically. And I think there's every reason to think that we're going to fall behind, both relative to our comparator group, which we think is our fair comparators, but then to geography, to 3 very large employers that have identical jobs in their payrolls that already are trying to pay more, or trying to pay at the 60th, but that's the 60th of better numbers and a better pool. So I certainly suggest that we consider the 60th of our pool. And within that, I think that gives us an excellent future recruitment and retention. It's the both. It costs a lot to have people leave. It costs a lot to bring people on. Both are expensive processes and unfortunate. But right now, we're doing a very good job in attracting excellent candidates. But the difference between 55 and 60 at the moment is, I'm rounding up to $4,000. So not a huge amount, but I think it's symbolic and strategic, I hope.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. To Councillor.
So if we go up to 60, is it just the 15 or 17 individuals that are affected, or is the entire workforce affected by that?
Mr. CAO.
Well, I definitely want to let the manager of people services speak. It becomes the aspirational target for the entire non-union group. It won't have any immediate impact on positions that aren't moving anywhere. I think both those are true, but I see head nods, but I'd love someone who isn't me to take a mic.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. It does impact the entire non-union group, but however, their salaries already fall within that target, so there wouldn't be any additional adjustments required. As Marianne Love said, we've got it right in a number of areas. There's just some key positions that have been identified that are falling behind, and so it's just those in either the 55th or 60th that would need an adjustment.
So that's what it is now, but going forward, like if you look at the increases in our operating budget, the major increase in our operation budget is because of staff salaries.
Yes.
And I'll ask another question then. When was the last time we lost an employee to the region, St. Catharines? I know we lost one to Welland 4 years ago, and Niagara Falls. Because pay is important, but so is all the other factors. And quite frankly, if you do studies, I don't personally believe this, but this is the stuff that's thrown at me, that pay is number 5 on priorities on where I work.
Let me go to the CEO.
I want to answer in a way that doesn't get into identifiable individuals in the public realm, but I can think of a significant employee we had on the second floor of this building who now works for the region, and that's been about a year. I can think of an employee of significance in RCW who now works for the region, and that's been, I'm going to say, a year and a half. Those are the last two significant staff members with whom I interact frequently, so that's speaking from sort of lived experience. But there are lots of senior managers in this corporation in the room. If you have other examples offhand, we are not in the flood that we were in previously. And we have enormously turned the table on that. I think the workplace environment is, we have interesting, good work. It's a lovely community. It's a great place to be employed. It's a supportive, positive environment. And wages are something between fair and reasonable. Do I think 60th makes more sense? Yes. But at the end of the day, you have to decide the value proposition for the taxpayer. And we will respect any decision you make in said regard. At the moment, for the whole year, we're talking less than $4,000. But also, that's entirely arbitrary and at your discretion. So if anyone has other good examples of staff to those three large ones, those are the ones that come top of mind.
To the Director of Planning.
Yeah, through the mayor, we do have an employee in our department who was with the town, left to go to a local municipality close, and has returned lately, and we're very privileged to have him back on staff.
Thank you. To the council.
No, that's fine, thanks.
Okay.
I'm done.
On this side, Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you very much. So just looking at the percentage of increases since 2021, so if we do choose to go to the 60th percentile, so that will be a 12% raise or rebalancing of wages over 4 years. So that is pretty significant. And I do agree with Councillor Wink saying that moving forward, this is going to be an impact on our tax levy. I'm just wondering if I could get maybe the feelings of some of the other councillors regarding moving to the 60th percentile, but pushing it forward to an effective date of July 1st, 2025. I think that's a reasonable compromise, considering it wasn't in 2025's budget. It would be provide a savings of $27,700. So just wondering if we can start to move forward on the motion, and just what are your feelings with regards to that alternative?
Thank you, Councilor Nesnick. I'll turn to Councilor Kerr.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support kind of where Councilor Nisnick's going and also recognizing Councilor Wink that once this is done, everything moves forward. I kind of look at the $4,000 as kind of just a bizarre number only because we have a savings of $70,000, but it's actually still being paid because it's just moved to another department. In terms of what I read, the town has a reallocation of the salary to the building budget, saving an additional $70,000. There's still $70,000 that has to come from somewhere. But I recognize there's a reduction in terms of whether it's capital, or sorry, this and that. I understand it. It's the money's moved, but the money's still going out, I guess is mine. Similarly, benefits budget overage, well, that's a savings for benefits budget, but you're using something that's an overage to finance something. Do you bank on that every year that you're always, so are you going to guess high every year and then have, it's everybody takes a look at it differently. So I concur with Councillor Niznik. I think we can go forward to this. I think it's good. I think not only money is a factor with people, but I have personally been involved and had people who have worked for me because they are willing to work for this because the work environment, it's not a job to them. It's employment, but it's not a hard, it's something, they don't get up in the morning. There's a lot of people, and I think if we go back to the old premise of paying and how wages kind of went crazy because the only way they could keep somebody happy was to just keep throwing more money at somebody. And I'm not saying in this instance that's the case, but a lot of jobs in places, if you don't pay them an outrageous amount, they're not going to go anyways because it's just an ugly job to have. I don't consider any of the work here at the town of Pelham an ugly job. I think the ethic of people here is phenomenal. I think the staff here are phenomenal. I appreciate everything you do. And yes, I agree that you need to be compensated to match the type of effort you put in, because I believe in many cases it's above and beyond what other municipalities have. And to be honest, in knowing people within the structures of the larger cities, there's a number of people that, if they could get out, would really like to get out of those particular environments because it's a pretty good paycheck and it's a pretty good set of benefits, but they're not happy where they are, but they're stuck. So we have to look at it on the two sides. One is, yes, compensate accordingly. At the same time, recognize that what's being provided as a community where it's, you don't walk around on pins and needles wondering, is this going to happen or that going to happen? I think a lot of the stuff relative to the region personally has been when there was noticing suddenly it's vanished, the whole, we're going to redo governance in Niagara seems to have gone by the boards. And there were a lot of people looking at, if this happens, what's the safest place to be versus being in a place where, I may be suddenly super redundant really fast. So taking that all into account, I'm going to go with support for Councillor Niznik of the July 1st timeline. When we did the municipal things for us, we did it into the future. We didn't go retroactive. I think putting this as a future date and set it in time, I think is a positive step. I'm not belittling anyone, but it also allows us a better chance to appreciate it as we go forward with the budgeting process in the future. So it's already in place as of July 1st. So for the future budgets coming, we know where we are and what it's going to be. But working retroactive, I think, is following Councillor Wing. It's behind our 2025 budget deliberations. So that's my position. That's where I am.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Eckert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern is Councillor Wink's concern that this carries forward to future tax years or future budget years. I have no concern about implementing this raise as of March 1st. I'm not sure, but there's no, when Councillor Kerr refers to retroactivity, it's not, they're not getting retroactive pay because this pay takes place on March 1st, which is in the future, so there's no, it's...
There was one of the options.
Oh, one of the options, okay. All right. Well, I wouldn't want retroactive. I would want it March 1st, or whatever it states here that I'm reading. And the amount of savings to delay it till July 1st is minimal at best. So I would not be in favor of delaying it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I've been in the position where trying to hire people, you couldn't get them because engineering workloads go up, skyrocket very quickly when you get a big project. And we were highly influenced by the amount of wages we paid. So I am in favor of realignment to the 60th percentile. But like Councillor Niznik and Councillor Kerr, I would delay the implementation to July the 1st. I think it makes it a mid-year premise, and that's what I would be in favor of and be voting for. Thank you.
And you're willing to put an amendment, I understand?
That is correct.
Okay, let me just see if there's any further comments, and then we'll get back to you on your amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in favor of moving to the 60th percentile, as we said before, and I'm move it forward as scheduled. I think we've been richly rewarded as a town and as taxpayers for the steps we took in 2021, and I think like anything, there's a limit to there's a finite limit to how far we can go, and I think we're probably getting pretty close when we get to the 60 points, but I think it's something it's an intelligent move for us to do this at that time. So I'd be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilor Nesnick. Anyone on this side? No. Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. Just one final comment before we kind of move to make a final decision on this. So it does say that if you push it forward to July 21st, it would be a savings of $27,700. That would cover the cost of a part-time summer employee, if not one, if not two. So that's where I'm thinking is that those dollars could be used in other areas to offset staff wages. But I do want to make it clear that I am in favor of the 60th percentile as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we get to Councilor Hildebrand's, my comments are, with I believe the majority of council, I'd like to take it to the 60th. I just remember, and a lot of us have lived in this community our whole lives, and before we got involved with the actual running of the town, being an elected official, and when we still had a community paper, boy, back there for a while, but that seemed like every month we were losing staff members. I believe the work environment was a lot different too at that point at this building, but whatever. And that was because, and we were losing to either Lincoln, whoever, to our neighbors. And it was a revolving door in here. I'm sure it was, from what I read in the local paper, and the number of senior staff, not even just senior, I realize what we're talking here now, but the amount of people that we had go out this door. And then, of course, when you bring someone in, it's a whole new process again. They have to get used to their new job, new part of the town, whatever. So there is a cost to having a revolving door, and I'm glad to see we don't have that now. And I will, whatever council, I'm glad that we were thinking of going to the 60th, and I will, I will go with whatever, I don't know how I'll vote yet, but I'll reserve that right until I see how other members feel about this. I'm sorry, Councilor Wayne.
So the way I look at it, there's two votes here. One is, when does the compensation package take in effect? And the other one is the percentage. And regardless of whether you vote 55 or 60, there's still going to be adjustments to those bands.
Yes.
So we've got to split what we're doing here.
Okay, and so that's your advice, is we'll split the vote, we have two votes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. CEO? Oh, okay. I'll turn to the clerk. you're in agreement with that?
That is fine, yes.
Okay, excellent. So then Councillor Hildebrand, if you want to put forth your amendment, and then we will go from there.
I think we want to divide the motion.
Yeah, well, okay, well, I thought maybe if you put your amendment forward, then we could do it. Well, without the amendment, then I guess we just call the vote then.
No,
We can divide the amendment for a vote now if there are any amendments.
Yeah.
That would be the
That's
correct
right.
time to do that, yes.
The first division would be on voting for the 60th or 55
Yes,
percentile.
yes.
The second motion would be to vote for the March the 1st or July 1st implementation date.
Yes. Okay, so you could, I would have thought you could have put an amendment and we just break the amendment up, but whatever.
Through you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, that is correct. There is a recommendation on the floor that does state March 1st. So
Yes.
perhaps if an amendment is brought forward to be that July 1st date, council could vote on that. And if that fails, we'll just go back to the March 1st date.
Okay, excellent. So then the first one is on the percentile. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, if anyone wants to put forward an amendment,
Yes.
or we'll just jump into the vote.
Okay, so is there any amendments forward by any member of council concerning the voting on the 60th percentile? Any amendments on that? Council Nesna?
So I'd like to make a motion to put forward that the recommendation be changed and read that council approve the formal adoption of a compensation target of the 60th percentile on average of the comparator group for non-union staff effective July 1st, 2025.
But that's what we're going to vote separately on, right? We're going to vote whether we're going to go to the 60th, and then we're going to vote on the time frame.
Then could I ask the
Correct,
clerk to
Madam
read the
Clerk?
motion we're going to vote on
Yes,
first,
so we're
please?
we'll split that out. So the first part of the motion will then be just to receive the report for information. The second piece being that council approve the formal adoption of the compensation target of 60th percentile. So if there's no amendments on that, we'll just vote on the 60th percentile.
Yes. Okay. So to receive the report is first up?
Yes, to receive the
Okay.
report, yes.
Any discussion before we call the vote on accepting the report? Not seeing any. All those in favor of accepting the report? I'm sorry. Oh, receiving. I'm sorry. Yes, receiving the report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next portion is the formal adoption of the compensation target of the 60th percentile on average.
Okay, thank you. So we're voting on accepting the recommendation of accepting the 60th percentile. Any comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Okay, and all those opposed? One opposed. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the next portion will be that the comparator group for non-union staff, the effective date is March 1st, 2025.
Okay, thank you. So we vote on that, then if we don't,
Well, if anyone wants to bring forward an amendment, now would be the time before you vote.
okay. Councilor Hildebrand.
I will make the amendment to change the date to July the 1st.
Okay, thank you. And I'd be looking for a seconder for that amendment.
A seconder, okay. Councilor Nesnick. Councilor Hildebrand, you put the motion forward. Any other comments?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nesnick, you seconded it?
Yes, no further comment.
Okay, thank you. So now this vote is is when this program gets initiated, and the motion, the amendment is for July the 1st. So all those, and of course, if you don't vote for the July 1st, then it means you're either for the March 1st, or we could go, that'll be decided after. But right now, it's for the July 1st implementation. All those in favor of the July 1st implementation? And all those opposed to July 1st? Okay, two opposed, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that amendment inserts July 1st, where the March 1st did appear. So now we will have a vote on the recital as a whole, so that council approve the formal adoption of the compensation target of the 60th percentile to be effective July 1st, 2025.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And all those opposed? Oh, wait. Okay, so we have a tie. So,
You got to vote.
yeah, so I have to vote, so I will vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. And then the last piece, Mr. Mayor, is that council approve the expenditure of $69,264 to implement the change.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this?
So
Councilor Nesnick?
that'll no longer be correct.
Change?
It'll be less the 27,000 and change. So maybe we just remove the number. 69 minus 27 is around 42, but thereabouts, understanding that. If you either don't make a change and just understand that it'll cost less, or make a change and just remove the number.
I believe we can.
Oh,
You have the number.
okay.
Sorry, the number is 41,558.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And if council is in agreement, we can probably accept that as a friendly amendment, as that is a result of the earlier motion.
Any opposition to accepting this as a friendly amendment? I don't see that.
Okay, thank you. So a vote on the recital as a whole to approve the expenditure of the $41,558.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does conclude that matter. Moving on, we are on our next item, 11.2.3, Pelham Arches Rehabilitation Options, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2025-0039 for information, and that Council approve a capital budget expenditure of $25,000 with funds to be drawn from the facilities reserve to complete the necessary rehabilitation and modifications to the Pelham Arches as detailed in this report, and the stamped engineering drawings prepared by James Frederico and Associates. To Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And before I go to council, this report was written a week ago to the Director of Public Works. Any new developments that you wish to announce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, new developments, not really. We did have a fairly significant wind event a couple days ago. What I can report is I did receive an email from the engineer that designed the structure. He visited the site, did a visual inspection, and is satisfied that it's in good operational performance. So that's what I have for an update.
Okay, thank you. I guess I was thinking perhaps anything on the sales or not. On the sails that are attached to the arches. I thought I had heard that we were going to be taking them down, but maybe I was listening to the wrong bird.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I think you're referring to the cladding on the arches?
Yeah.
So that's a discussion point. I think until we get a permanent fix in place, that's going to be a good solution for stabilizing the structure. That would be one option that we could consider, would be to remove that cladding temporarily, because with that cladding on the arches, it provides a significant wind load to the structure.
Okay.
By removing the cladding, you would reduce the wind load on the structure. So barring the report states that the design engineer had made recommendations to do a rehabilitation strategy within 6 months of that inspection, which was completed in November. So the idea is that we would try to have something in place by the springtime.
Okay.
So if the process of getting that rehabilitation project completed is going to be delayed, then the recommendation of staff would be to remove the cladding to remove the loads on the structure.
Okay, thank you for that then. Thank you. On the report, any other comments? Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the Public Works Director comments with regards to cladding on the arches. Even yesterday when I was here, when we weren't in the high wind event, those structures were moving back and forth considerably. So there was, whether you want to call it vibration or there is lateral movement, and that definitely will affect the joint design that we have presently there, whether we change the bolts or don't change the bolts. Plus, we've got different materials, and I think the solution that the engineer provides calls for drilling through, and we're drilling through different materials. And I'm sure that removing the cladding will make a definite effect on the arches and stabilize them, and I'm sure that they will be safe then. I'm not convinced where we are, they're safe at the present time. That being said, I still want to change the motion. My intention was to direct staff to continue to investigate a peer review of the design. I think it's absolutely essential that that gets done. There's a number of factors that have to be identified and solved, and I think it's cognizant upon us as council to ask staff to do that.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it over to council on that idea, but Director of Public Works, any comments before we discuss this at council?
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is coming back to council based on direction given to staff for looking at a rehabilitation strategy and coming back with cost estimates, which is included in the report. And the second part of that was to complete a forensic investigation or a third-party review on the engineering design and the structure as it sits now, and look at the mechanisms of failure and how that occurred. So staff, unfortunately, are not able to provide further information with respect to that, and that's the way the report reads. We have reached out to multiple engineering firms to do a review of the design, do an investigation on the modes of failure, and we haven't been able to successfully get anybody that would be interested in doing that work. So that's something that staff, we can continue to work on, try to get a company that would be interested in doing that work for us. But to date, we haven't been successful in retaining somebody to do that, or get the cost to do that as well. We haven't had any estimates on what it would cost to do that.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, do we need this motion, or is this what, will staff continue to look for a third party to review this? Would you be more comfortable if you had this direction from council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I believe direction from council to staff to start or keep on putting resources to trying to find a firm that will do that would be beneficial to us in the department.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kerr.
Not very much. A couple quick questions. In the original design that was provided, was the cladding part of the original design, or was it added after the fact?
To the director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I think that's a question I would want to ask the design engineer, so I can't answer that specifically, but to best of my knowledge, it was always intended to have the cladding on the arches, and that would have been part of that design, but that's something I can definitely follow up with the designer and get back to council on.
Councilor?
Thank you. Yes, and I concur with Councilor Hildebrand that cladding is creating a series of stresses above and beyond what I think was anticipated for an open design structure. Yes, I recognize there will be some vibrational factor. All bridges, everything moves a bit. But the minute you add an area where wind can be collected, you summarily increase. And if we look at the geographic location of that particular, of the arches being a funnel of air being pushed all the way down that particular one, I can see how that is something that I remember at the University of Guelph engineering people doing their mock-ups and putting buildings in all different places whenever they did, and it was more for snow and load and wind, showing where accumulations would be. So I'm myself, I'm quite, I'm supportive that staff would continue to look for potential forensic. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to. Some of the statements that you've made in here, I'm supportive of fixing. Personally, and having other individuals involved in the engineering community, not Councillor Hildebrand, but other people, a peculiarity that was told to me by a particular individual and said, I won't go under those arches the way they are right now with the wind. And that struck me when they said, I'll go around other ways, I'm not going. And in querying with them, part of it was to do with the cladding, that the stress on that particular one and how it was constructed, et cetera. one thing I've learned is you can always engineer something to minimum standards that will get a stamp on it. And then there's things that are above and beyond standards. And getting another engineer to review another engineer is also kind of that's a dicey topic in any situation. So forensics, I understand the challenges, but that would be my personal one, is to look at the removal of the cladding. Some of the items you mentioned, to go through that and update the structure itself, I think are positive decisions to be made in the interim, and then we can go forward looking at review relative to that. So that's kind of where I am. It's a little mix of what you've got there, but it's I appreciate the report, and thank you for taking the time.
Okay, thank you. Before we we haven't put the motion on the floor yet. Before we put Councilor Hildebrand's motion on the floor, any other comments, or Councilor Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I looking at this, the situation we have here is we really need a structured method of finding the root cause of this, because I don't believe we know what the root cause is. It could fall into one of four categories, including design, materials, methods, and human factors, because to take two examples, there is a galvanic difference between materials. So there's on that structure that we have there, and I wrote it down here, the corroding material is actually the bolts or the structure, the stainless steel structure, hot rolled stainless steel structure, and the contact item that's being corroded is the bolt. It always works that there's sometimes some pieces are low risk, some are higher risk, but there's a galvanic difference between the two materials. And if this is the case, and these bolts are being corroded, and I think I heard that one time that there was a corrosion in the bolt, and that would seem to be the cause of it. The other thing for the design, they're taking a 3/16 inch tube, and we're putting a sweep in it. And to do that, you have to stretch something, and the inside diameters are probably going to be 3/16, and the outside thickness is going to be something less than 3/16. So there's a lot of differences go into creating a sweep in a structure like that, and the junctions and the solutions we're talking about are the same materials, which will perhaps even have a different galvanic difference. So this leads me to think that this structure will eventually, like all things that we make, will eventually collapse, but this will be a somewhat speedier because of the types of material we use. Now, manpower-wise, human factors are, we've got these 24 joints and the number of bolts and nuts in there. We found one that the one that wasn't torqued properly, so that's a human factor. How are we going to check and make sure that all these bolts are going to be checked to the same level? You know, I think we have to do something like that, and I'm recommending that we undertake, and what is called in the metallurgy industry is a FMEA, which is in two parts. It's a failure mode. You identify all the failure modes, how the arches could fail. You don't need a consultant to start this. Then we have the effects and analysis to see which ones are critical and which have to be addressed. Now, I'd suggest that if we had one bolt that failed, and we have how many? Well, there's 4 or 5 other ones that were a cascading impact. I mean, we're lucky we found out about it with the one bolt, because they would all have failed in the meantime. So, I'm recommending an FMEA of this failure mode and effects analysis. And in support of that, these drawings are done on a CAD drawing. They're computer-aided designs. I believe that the consultant that we have right now should, or the engineer we have right now, should be able to do a stress analysis on the entire structure, and perhaps not the pylons, but the pylons should be should be scoped to get a coordinate measurement of where exactly they are on the street. And we should measure that against the rise and fall of temperatures and find out exactly where they are, because we've got an asset there. The town has been gifted an asset by the citizens, and we should be protecting it, I think. And those are the two things that I would ask for. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. If I was to turn back the clock of time by about 10 minutes, I would have stressed that I wouldn't have allowed council to make engineering reports, recommendations, unless you can hold up an engineering badge license that is valid. I didn't, so I gave other councilors leeway. So we've all discussed engineering protocols, and the deputy, the director has indeed heard us. But let's no more engineering reports, suggestions, and let's deal with the staff report. Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you. I promise not one engineering sentence will come out of my mouth right now. So there you go. So my concern is if we defer this or send it back to staff for reports. The report says that the corrections should have been made within the 6 retorqued or should be addressed within 6 months. My concern is if we go back to staff and ask them to look for an engineering department or an engineering firm that will look at this structure. They've been unsuccessful so far, so I'm not sure how much further their tentacles can go in order to reach a firm that would be willing to come and do it, and if that will fit within the timeline. So I think the engineer, what I can see, makes reasonable sense that they replace the bolts with the 8, whatever the number 8 is. Those sound stronger and more effective, as well as maybe removing whatever that cladding is in order to help with the winds. So I think I'd like to vote on the recommendation as it's written and see where that falls.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hildebrand, you mentioned that you wanted to bring forward a motion.
Yes.
So let's get that motion up on the floor. You need a seconder. Give us the motion again,
Thank
please.
you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask the clerk to read it because the clerk and I worked ahead of time to prepare a motion.
Very good. Thank you.
Perfect. So the amendment would read that the motion be amended to strike the entire second recital and insert that council directs staff to continue to investigate a peer review of the design, and that staff be directed to remove the cladding from the arches as soon as possible to reduce the wind-induced movement.
Okay, thank you.
Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
Excellent.
Now, is there a seconder for the Councilor Hildebrand's motion? Okay, Councilor Kerr, you will second. And as a mover, any other comments? Councilor Hildebrand.
I think it's essential that we have a peer review. I think peer reviews are available because you're not going to get an engineer in the region that's going to check another engineer. But in my line of work, we were qualified under ISO 9000, which meant all my work, all my signatures. I appreciated them coming in and auditing everything I did because what I did was critical and it involved people's lives. And having a peer review, I thought, was essential in my line of work. So in this case, I think it's critical, and I'll leave my statements there.
Thank you. Councilor Kerr, you are seconded. Any comments?
Yes, in listening to everyone and the challenges of time and what can we get done and how fast and can we find somebody and all of this, and I seconded the motion to get it on the floor. My concern is that if we go ahead and change out all the bolts before there's a forensic investigation, have Have we damaged the scene such that now your investigation isn't going to get you where you want to be? That's the dilemma I have. But I believe that we have to do something from a safety standpoint. We've identified an issue. We've got to get something put in place to try and fix that. And is my understanding is it's just to direct staff to go back to get someone for a forensic, but that wouldn't delay the undertaking of repairs. Am I correct in that, or am I incorrect?
I think, other than removing the cladding right now, which I think is essential, will put us in a safe position. To go ahead and change bolts at this time and make any kind of repair at this time, I think I would not be voting for it.
Okay, thank you. To the director, because I believe that changing the bolts was put forward by the designer of the arches. Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the recommendation by the designer was actually not to change the bolts over at this point in time. When bolts needed to be replaced, you would replace them with the stronger bolts. And part of the reason is you'd have to take apart the structure again, put it back together. Through the inspections that were completed and the repairs that were done on November 9th or 13th, he's sure that the structure has been fabricated or put together in accordance with his drawings and his design. And so the recommendation to not go ahead and replace the bolts was because you have to go through the process again of retorquing everything 6 months after that's completed. From a staff perspective, I think it would be prudent to go ahead and put a stronger bolt in. So that was the recommendation from staff, and we would come in and do a retorque on those bolts 6 months following that installation. But what I will say is the design engineer is qualified. He's a professional engineer, and we rely on the professional services and credentials that individual has. So what I'm hearing is that there's still some questions as to the recommended solution moving forward. And if that's the case, I'm happy to take that back to the design engineer for review. And if the direction is to continue to look for somebody to give a third-party advice on that repair and what maybe the mechanism of failure was to begin with, we're happy to undertake that direction as well. One of the recommendations from the designer was that he recommended this rehabilitation strategy to reinforce the joints, to have that be completed within 6 months. So I want to, again, talk to the engineer, but from my perspective and professional opinion is if you reduce the wind load on the structure, you won't have as much probability of failure. So one of the ways to do that would be to take down the cladding. And so if we're going to delay the process of coming up with a repair strategy, then my recommendation would be to go ahead and remove the cladding now until such time that we have a repair strategy in place and a way to move forward, and then that could be reinstalled at that time.
Okay. Thank you for those words. Thank you. Any other comments before we vote on the motion on the floor? I see no other comments. One more, if you could read the motion one more time, please.
Yes, absolutely. The amendment reads that the motion be amended to strike the entire second recital and insert that council directs staff to continue to investigate a peer review of the design, and that staff be directed to remove the cladding from the arches as soon as possible to reduce the wind-induced movement.
Okay, thank you. I don't see no further comments. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And all those opposed? Okay, our motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the motion as amended.
Okay, thank you. Now the complete motion as amended. Any comments on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor? On the opposed? To oppose, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings you to item 11.2.4, Strategic Plan Update and Status Report. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2025/0045 for information, and that Council direct a special meeting of Council sitting as Committee of the Whole to be held on February 22nd, 2025 at 9 a.m. in the Accursi Room at the MCC. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the list that council has indeed accomplished, 15, I believe, on that list. It's not something, if you were to walk down Main Street in Fond Hill, I don't believe there's any of these that will jump out at you and you would notice right off the bat. But it's each one of these items have made the administration of this town brought that up to par and helped in other ways, parking technology, new systems for special events, what have you, as you go down the list. The fact that we do indeed have 15 completed items before us today, we're halfway through our term of 4 years. We've got 2 years behind us. I think that this is a great list to show that this council and the staff we have working for us are meshing together really well. We're accomplishing great things in this to make this town a better place to be a part of. And I'm very proud of this list. It shows that this town, especially this council, can debate, make decisions, give staff worthwhile projects to continue improving this town. And I'm very proud of this list, and I look forward to the meeting that we will be having, I believe it's February 22nd, to redefine what we as a council want to see for the second half of our terms. Those are my thoughts. I'll leave it at that. Any other comments on the strat plan? Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with your comments. I think it has been an exceptional accomplishment by the staff and with the approval of council. I'd like to add one other subset to that list, mainly because that's up my alley.
Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, like blowing my arm. It has to do with the conservation of demand management program. If you haven't read that as a councilor, I would recommend that as technical reading for you. But it has to do with every 5 years, the government requires us to do it. But there's a lot of things in here we do, not because we have to, but because we want to. And one of the things we want to do is the monitoring of the energy we use at the Meridian Community Center. I can tell you since 2008, every week we have a chart and the data of the electricity usage in that facility, mainly because it's the largest signal bill and it's the largest single expenditure that we have. So every week it gets sent out to the staff, the director, the operations staff, and a couple of members on council, and review that diligently. And I'd just like to compliment everybody on that. Thank you.
Thank you again, Councilor Hildebrand, for bringing that to council's attention. Thank you. Any other comments on the strat plan report? Deputy Mayor Eckert.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, just to comment on the report I read here, I'm amazed at the amount of items that we take off this list every year that we accomplish. I don't think I've ever been involved in strat plans before where we accomplish so much in a period of time. So that's a kudos to not just to this council, but especially to our staff for accomplishing this. And secondly, I'd like to apologize for not being there at the strat plan meeting. I'll be someplace very sunny, and I'll be very sad that I'm not there.
And
No,
you said
I
that
don't.
with a straight
I
face.
will zoom into the 2 meetings I'm going to miss, but unfortunately, I think 3 Zoom-ins is too many. But I have had some discussions with other counselors, and I know that my fellow counselors will come up with a great strat plan along with the staff input. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Deputy Mayor, any other comments? Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You never talk to me, so I don't know, so. I do have a couple of questions. How are we ensuring that we've invited the public, and I think rightly so. What steps have we been taking to make sure that people who would have an interest in what we're talking about would be there? For example, the future of the model railroad building in Fenwick. I mean, those folks are in there every Wednesday night for hours and all during the week, and I'm sure they would have an interest in hearing what we're talking about.
To the CEO.
Well, there's a couple different ways. I mean, partially, if it's item specific, that's cart before horse. The notion is, does council think it's appropriate for us to look at that asset, which is to say the building, and discuss a future for it? And I don't know what the outcome of that would be. But to the more general point, the council is very fair, more general point, how do we ensure that people are aware or engaged? The report being on this public agenda was step 1 to that. The announcement of a potential session, which I assume you're going to approve for February 22nd, is the next step of that. And then it will be on the Engaging Pelham website, I would imagine. I'd be surprised if this isn't in the newspaper as a result of this report and this conversation. So we're going to push it in our own social media channels. And then, of course, we're moving it to a large, comfortable, very inviting space in a building that sees 577,000 guests a year. So we're moving it to the, sort of the pinnacle and the best spot we have in the entire community, as by way of foot traffic and welcoming nature. So we're certainly trying to encourage some involvement, participation, and attendance through the various means we have. We wait for council's vote, assuming you endorse a date, then we can actually advertise it on our media channels, et cetera. So that hasn't happened as yet because we don't have approval, but assuming the vote is forthcoming, those things will start either late this afternoon or tomorrow morning is the plan.
And to your point, until after that meeting on the February 22nd, that's the meeting where we'll decide what's on the final 2 years of our that plan.
The middle part of that report is meant to be food for thought or a starting point. You could reject every single one of those suggestions from staff. At the end of the day, the choice and the strategic direction is council's. After the budget, I think it's the most important thing you do. And that's you telling us how to spend our time in your absence. So how to harness our talents and energies as a staff and our efforts. So what, if any of those make the cut, is entirely your choice. But it is food for thought, and it does reflect some suggestions by various members of the leadership team that think these are things that are worth time and effort and might be beneficial to the community. But it's really nothing other than a starting point for a conversation. Where the conversation goes is up to council.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Any other comments on the report? Not seeing any? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And I see none opposed. Motion carries. To the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Our next item is 11.2.5, Christmas in Pelham, and I have a motion put forth by Deputy Mayor Eckert, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2025-0040 for information, and that Council designate Christmas in Pelham 2025 Outdoor Christmas Market to be held Friday, December 5th, 2025 from 4 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at 20 Pelham Town Square, and declare the Outdoor Christmas Market a municipally significant event, and that Council authorize the clerk to make an application for a special occasion permit for the 2025 Christmas in Pelham Outdoor Christmas Market. And further, that council authorize the following road closures, being Pelham Town Square entrance at Pelham Street to 55 meters east of Pelham Street from 10 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. on Friday, December 5th, 2025. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. Any comments, questions, the staff on this report? Not seeing any. I will just go ahead and call the vote then. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. And as an item of new business, I do understand that Councillor Olson has a quick announcement to make.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, indeed. Temporary could indeed affect a lot of members in this community. Councillor Olson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Last meeting, I informed everyone that there was going to be, Niagara Transit was going to be conducting a survey, and this is an important moment in the development of the service. And there's a questionnaire online and available to everybody, and every council received notification of it. This is the Facility Strategic Assets and Service Plan. It's online at nrtransit.ca. And there's a community engagement session at the MCC on February the 5th, at the MCC 9:30 to 12:30, and that will give the residents a chance to select the options that they pick for transit over the next 10 years.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yep, and I'm hoping the town can join with the region in getting the word out to our residents and let them have a vote or a voice on the next 10 years. Thank you for that announcement, Councillor. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 14, presentation and consideration of bylaws. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, that the mayor and clerk be and here are authorized to sign and seal the bylaws as follows, being 03-2025, being a bylaw to amend 88-2024 to establish 2025 fees and charges to be allocated by the Corporation of the Town of Pelham, and to amend fees and charges to the Public Works Department schedule, and 04-2025, being a bylaw to amend Town of Pelham number 26-2024, being Parks and Recreation Areas bylaw. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. After reviewing these two bylaws, any questions, the staff, any comments? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that brings you to a motion put forth by Councillor Olson. Councillor Olson, did you wish to read this into the record, or would you like me to?
No, if you wouldn't mind, please read it in for me.
Yes, absolutely. So this is Councillor Olson's motion regarding telecommunication tower protocol review, moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Whereas the Town of Pelham has established policy S300-02, protocol for the development or redevelopment of telecommunications towers, which was enacted in 2009. And whereas a review of the current protocol is necessary to ensure its continued effectiveness and alignment with the standards set by the federal regulatory bodies responsible for overseeing telecommunications infrastructure. Now therefore be it resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham direct staff to conduct a review and analysis of the existing protocol for the development and redevelopment of telecommunications towers within the municipality, and that staff consult with the Agricultural Advisory Committee prior to bringing a report back to Council, and that staff report back to Council by or on February 19th, 2025, providing an analysis of the review, including any proposed updates or amendments to the current policy that are required.
Okay,
To you, Mr.
thank you. Councillor Olson, you brought forward the motion.
Yes.
Any further comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I'd like to thank the clerks and planning for assisting in developing this, and to Councillor Hildebrand for agreeing to be the seconder. Times have changed since 2009, especially in the field of telecommunications, and we're now faced with situations where there are more and more cell towers which are now going to achieve heights and locations that might not be completely desirable to the community. We also know that there are differences in the years since in federal regulations, and there may be methods and means of making sure that these cell towers aren't close and intrusive on the community. So that is the purpose of asking the question. We don't want to make an error of omission and allow something that we might be able to mitigate somehow. So that's the purpose of asking for the report.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hildebrand, you seconded the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. In Ontario, the federal government, through Innovation, Science, Economic Development, ISED, holds exclusive authority over the approval and jurisdiction and regulation of cell phone towers under the Radio Communications Act. The federal jurisdiction supersedes provincial legislation, including Ontario Planning Act and municipal zoning bylaws, which do not apply to telecommunications facilities. However, ISED mandates that telecommunications service providers engage in land use consultations with local municipalities. Municipalities can establish protocols to guide these consultations, allowing them to influence aspects such as tower placement, design, and aesthetics to align with local preferences. Despite these consultative role, municipalities cannot veto cell phone tower installations. The final decision rests with ISED. In summary, while Ontario municipalities do not have the authority to approve or deny cell phone tower installations, we play a significant role in the consultation process, influencing the siting, design, and jurisdiction. And that's what this motion is meant to deal with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hildebrand. I see this motion calls for the report coming back by February 19th. I will ask the CAO if that is indeed a doable timeline in his estimation.
We believe that it is, and I say that because we do have an existing policy, and Councillor Olson's entirely correct. Anything that's about 15 years old deserves a second look. But that being said, Councillor Hildebrand is also bang on correct. We're way outside our jurisdiction here, no power whatsoever. I used to do work in this field, and at the time, which is more than a decade removed, what we could do fundamentally was gather up the concerns of residents and package them up properly and submit them on to the federal government. That was the only thing a municipality could do in a meaningful sense. I don't know what, if anything, has changed. I haven't kept up or current on that. I've been earning a living otherwise. So the point is, we're not starting from zero. We do have a policy. It is aged, and to both points, it's worth looking at, and historically, we can do nothing. All those statements are true, but because of that, we think we can produce the work in relative short order, and with that, because there's a real live issue. I mean, in a perfect world, we'll have another 4 weeks on top of that, yes. But we live in a real world. We're reacting to something that we think is happening in the community, and we'd like to get those answers and some explanatory notes, and also sort of here's what you can do with other orders of government that actually have some capacity in this area. So that wasn't very short, but yes, I think we can meet February 19th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, you have the motion in front of you. We will open for questions. Deputy Mayor Eckert.
Yes, I would be in support of this motion for a number of reasons. First of all, because when read by Councillor Hildebrand, the Act states that although we do have extremely limited powers in this area, it does encourage us to have policies in place to have discussions, and I think we should have one in place that's up to date. I was wondering if we could put a motion in there or something in there in our policy that states that once they put these towers up, they actually use them. Because that's the big issue we have right now in Pelham. We have a brand new tower that's put up, but there's nothing on it, and it's not alleviating our problems here. So maybe if we have a policy in place that encourages the federal government to ensure that they're used would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments?
Mr. Mayor, this is a notice of motion, so it's going to come up in front of council in the future.
No, this is
So
not the notice
We're
of
jumping way ahead of the game discussing the parameters and everything else about this.
Oh, yeah, it's a motion. It's not a notice of motion, right? I'll ask the clerk.
Okay,
That is correct. The notice of motion did come the last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
sorry. I
Okay.
just read it under motions and notices of motion, so sorry
Okay,
about that.
okay. Knowing that it is now, any
Oh, yeah,
comments?
My only comment to it is that it specifically identified the Agricultural Advisory Committee when there may be all kinds of other things within the town that maybe should be connected to this as well.
Which I'm sure will be,
This one's come up only because what's been brought forth to us has yet to be formally applied for, but it's proposed to be on agricultural land. So
Yeah.
that's all. That's the only, I didn't want to exclude any.
oh, I'm sure the staff will
Yep,
review all aspects.
yep, no, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. Any other questions, comments on the motion? I personally will, I think it's a great idea. As a CAO, Councilor Olson and Councilor Hildebrand, we have a policy. Let's make sure it's not outdated, bring it up to snuff, and if there's any way we can take part in perhaps relocating by certain distances, well, then I think that's something that we should look at if indeed that has to be, that situation arises. I'm all up for updated policies, that's for sure. Any other comments? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries. Councilor Olson, Councilor Hildebrand, thank you for bringing the motion to council. Thank you. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 16, resolution to move in camera. I have a motion put forward by Deputy Mayor Eckert, seconded by Councilor Wink. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following under sections 239.2 and 239.3 of the Municipal Act as follows. Section F, advice that is subject to solicitor and client privilege. 3.11, the meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training the members. Section E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board. One item, Ward 1. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? I see none opposed. We will get ready to move in camera. Thank you.